All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I keep forgetting if I've not been in the game for a while, the loading is a bit long. I have it on my hard drive, not a solid state drive. But welcome. We are back to Stellaris. I'm actually pretty bad at going on a little too long with the housekeeping and that, but I do want to get at least a little done. Just bear with me one quick second here. I need to double check that I got my settings right. But I wanted to briefly cover, there was an absence from the game for 1 week. And then, I don't know, there have been a few things that have gone on. So I wanted to take a minute and get everybody up to speed. And then, we can move forward from there. So for those of you who missed it or haven't been around the last couple of weeks, so last week we didn't do Stellaris in favor of completing my Dancer Legacy for Cultist Simulator. The reason we did that was Tuesday last week we were on the Steam store page for Cultist Simulator, and we got to play the new Apostle Legacy, or at least one of the new Apostle Legacies, in front of a much inflated audience, and I got some very kind words from just about everybody about that broadcast. So if you came out to support it, thank you very much. I had actually messaged the producer ahead of time saying that I was fairly certain we would not be able to make it to the front page. And not only did we make it to the front page, but we were actually in the #1 slot essentially until Dota 2 came back. So I owe you all a very big thank you for that. Now, some of you who have followed the channel because of that are wondering where the devil the Cultist Simulator is, because on the following Wednesday I went into Mass Effect, and my justification for going into Mass Effect was simply the fact that between Cultist Simulator on Monday and then the broadcast on Tuesday, I had spent 16 hours in the game. Now, you can see this on YouTube. What is recorded on YouTube is about 15 hours, because there was a half hour where I wasn't able to connect to the Steam page, and I just sort of trimmed that. I hit stop and reconnected, so I trimmed those bits. And then just other little bits that keep the numbers from not adding up. But yeah, I spent a lot of time inside the game, and I sort of had my twofold interests of one, wanting to make sure that if people wanted to see that content, they could. So that, obviously with so much gameplay, I am shocked, by the way, at the number of people who are watching that. It's actually some of the most viewed material that I've put out in the last month or two. So that's very unusual, I think. Well, maybe not unusual, but that's very unexpected for me. It actually seems that my videos do better when I go really long. And so I'm going to keep that in mind moving forward. The problem is that I really just don't have the time to dedicate 8 hours to doing a stream. The only reason I was able to do that last week was because I had the day off work. But yeah, with that in mind, so if you are here for Cultist Simulator, don't worry, that's coming back on Wednesday. I figure the week is sort of enough time for people to catch up with what's going on. We're back on track with Stellaris, and if you're wondering why Friday isn't included inside of that, that was because the VIP demo for Anthem came out, and I actually picked up a Origin Premier subscription in order to play it. We did that with Johnny. Somebody who does a very good job of making me feel better, let me know that, I don't know, they enjoyed it. So that made me feel good. And K5RTO, I don't know if you're in the channel, you might be. I just noticed a retweet, so thank you very much for that. I am always grateful for... Hello, Domi, how you doing? I'm always grateful for the attention. And one last comment. Some of you may know that I do blogging every once in a while. Now, my blog is a little bit like my channel in the sense that I really don't advertise it. I arguably advertise my blog more because I'll at least do multiple tweets about that. But it does not have a very wide readership, which means that when you share it, it shows up in the measures. So today, a couple of very, well, I'll say bigger accounts than me, but people who also I personally sort of respect and I really like either their writing style or the insights that they have. They retweeted and also had some comments for my most recent article. So that was Alexis Kennedy and I think it's Jan David Hassel. But they were kind enough to retweet that, which means it definitely got quite a bit more readership than I'm sort of accustomed to. And that's great. I actually love those moments because what's so fun about that is whenever that happens, I actually get a message from WordPress which basically says, hey, is everything okay? People seem to be reading your blog. But yeah, if you haven't had a chance, if you ever want to read them, they're at systemchalk.ca. The one that seems to have gotten some attention is Valve's Cut. And obviously I mentioned a couple of the bigger names who had some really, really good feedback to give in addition to sharing that article. It did give me a minute to want to say thank you, and also to point out, while you may, I know for a fact that there are some people in the sort of in the ecosystem of the channel who sort of kind of have this belief of, oh, well, I'm not big enough to really matter. My blog is sort of small and unread enough that that's mean. I must be missing. So I'm sorry, Domi. I'm not sure what you're responding to there. Also, this game seems very loud for me now. Okay, well, that explains it. But yeah, anyways. Oh, you mean the WordPress alert? Yeah, it's really funny. But yeah, I did just want to take a quick second here. I am not helping my case at all by sort of citing the bigger influencers that mentioned the blog. But if you've ever sat and sort of said as like, I'd share it, but not that many people look at me. When like I can 100% say I could show you a graph of the traffic, and I would be able to tell you which were the ones when there was somebody with 10 followers, 5 followers sharing the blog. It's the only way that people read my stuff is if it gets shared. I don't like being too annoying about it, although I am learning to just kind of put myself out there. And this one I was particularly happy with because it sparked comments. Somebody corrected something that I was uncertain on. It was also kind of obvious that I missed sort of the point I was trying to make. I said something about how basically I feel that Humble, for the purposes of that article, piggybacks off of Steam. And what I meant by that was that when you get a key from the Humble store, you will most likely be downloading the game and sort of attaching it to your Steam account. So when I say piggybacks off of Steam, I'm not saying that they're not their own storefront or that they don't do that bundle business and all of that. They do, and I mean, I try and actually use the Humble store as often as I can. But for the purposes of, so essentially this is about what goes into the cut that these storefronts take. And the only thing I was trying to point out with that with that observation was that Humble does not have the same kind of sort of hosting costs that that Valve does, because of course Humble is able to leverage Steam and Uplay and all of the different services. Now, you can actually download games from Humble, so it's not that they don't have those costs, it's just that they are much more reduced. So But yeah, anyways, if you want to read it, you can. But I did just want to take a minute here. Like, it's not just that I'm trying to get attention. That's obviously one thing that everybody on the internet wants. But it's specifically that there was some attention which resulted in some back and forth, which I personally appreciated quite a bit, and I thank you all for. So, okay, so I made a bit of a boo-boo on Gaul, it looks like. What happened here? Oh, nope, I'm building the agricultural district, so that will be dealt with shortly. There is also sort of an argument for a mining district, because robots will be good at working that, but I think food is my higher priority than minerals at the moment. Let's actually take a minute to do a proper accounting of the galaxy as we find it, because I have had a couple of days. You'll most surely check my blog out. You might as well stop procrastinating. No problem. Mad King Brutus says, "Hey system, I would love to stay and watch, but Kingdom Hearts 3 came out today on Australia, so now you need to clean the underside of your now sticky desk." What an image. Mad King Brutus, no worries. I believe you... I'm not imagining this. I'm almost certain that you mentioned Kingdom Hearts 3 is coming out. I hope you really enjoy it. I've never played the series, and I have a feeling that you would enthusiastically recommend it if I asked if it's worth playing. I have no idea if I'll ever get a chance to play it, but I hope it's everything that you're expecting. And if you're on a break during it and want to let us know how it is, definitely stop by and let us know. I love hearing people's enthusiasm for games. And please don't consider that to be derailing the conversation or anything like that, because I like to know when good things happen to people. But yeah, if you gave me plenty of warning that you'd be away. I don't take attendance. I'm always happy to have you here, but I don't think that you should be turning yourself off of. I don't think you should be turning yourself off of something fun to play. Hard reset your body clock so you can play this for 24 hours. All right. Well, I hope you have a good one. But yeah, Domi, I mean, one of the things about it was I actually did that second blog because of a comment. It's not specifically a comment that you'd made, but it happens to be related to it. I usually start a blog at the beginning of the month, and then I just wind up doing other things. And I don't like what that translates to. What that usually winds up meaning for me is I sort of wind up, I have an idea and it sort of sits with me, and I only pick away at it a little bit each day, and I wind up having a lot of off days. And it means I'm not writing, it means I'm not practicing it or not getting better. And I don't think the blogs are as good when I do that. So the most recent one, the one that got the share today, is one where I said is like, I'm going to take my lunch hour and I'm going to write. I will give myself a proofread outside of work, but I want to see what happens when I when I force myself to write something quick. I wanted to hit a 1,000 word count. I went a little bit over it, but that's life. And yeah. All right, see you, Mad King Brutus. I really just wanted to see whether or not I could actually do that. That I could have enough discipline to actually get the thing written in what I thought was reasonable time. Anyways, I definitely didn't want to spend 15 minutes talking about blog stuff. It just happens to be something that happened, and wanted to say thank you to everybody for your part in making that grow. Okay, so we are going to save our people from the Ransomeers. I believe I'm sending this fleet to clear out I'm trying to remember why I did that. I think it's just because they're so small and weak. I'm actually going to keep these around here because they'll sort of serve as a small natural boundary to my my allies. It would be interesting if I can possibly expand out to this system here, but I'm not going to push my luck, because that's going to be heavy on influence resources, as well as the fact that my sprawl is so high already. I sort of closed this off so I could get access to the 10 physics research. Research is going to be the way that I sort of power through some of the issues that I'm having right now in terms of scale. The worker will be put to work in Gaul Prime shortly. I can upgrade this building, but I don't believe I have enough volatile motes to maintain it. We've got enough jobs for 7 more people, so I won't worry too much about that. Jobs for 3 people. Now, the thing that's really funny about this one is the planet's completely full. Unless I start clearing out some of these areas, there's no more space for anybody to do anything. So Yamal is just gonna stay where it is for now. I gotta remember how many people. 2 farmer jobs, so I'm gonna risk it for now, but I should take an eye on Gaul and see if there's anything better that I can do with that in time. Playtham's a similar story, so we are assembling as well as building, but we're also making an agriculture district, so we're good there. Akram, it says industrial world. I'm curious why. Oh, because it's full of civilian industries. Duh. Okay, well, let's think a little bit about what's going on here. We've got enough jobs for people, and then the colony is a colony. So, and of course, this is the one where all the drugs are being taken. So, I think I'm reasonably happy with where the Empire's at right now. The only argument for me using influence at the moment would be to open new branches, but I don't think I have a really good argument for opening a branch. Energy is one of my higher resources right now, so I think I'm going to leave that be for the time being. I have upgrades that I can do, but those upgrades should probably wait until after the fleets are back from the war. So, recovering these guys, I do kind of want to try and get my expansion under control. So we do have the Gaia worlds, which I sort of want to use as my opportunity to get a bunch of population and just generally build. So the trick with where I'm at right now, normally I wouldn't go for so much sprawl. With Megacorp especially, the fact that my sprawl is so small, getting resources through adding new star systems is not an efficient way of gaining resources. It's actually better to get planets and fill it with as many people working as possible. But I am where I am, so at the very least I want to sort of close off any of the undeveloped resources that I have, and then I can sort of consider the next steps a little bit later. I've got a few things like special projects. Actually, let me just double check that our science ships are on the way. Yes. Domi is asking, let's talk about something else then. Did you end up downloading Deponia? I got the key, but I have not installed the game yet because I'm a little busy in terms of overall games, but I definitely do intend to play it. Domi? I know you recommend that one very highly, so it's one that I'm definitely keeping in mind. All right, so we've got a couple of hangar bays. That was to deal with piracy, and we seem to be in reasonable shape there. Now, I think the only drawback is I don't know what else to do with this. I'm sort of tempted to go for an anchorage. Anchorage and possibly a shipyard. Let's at least start with the anchorage. And There is sort of an argument to be made for putting at crew quarters here. And that's just basically, this can be one of my frontier outposts. But you know what? We'll sit on that for a little bit. Because, of course, our big threat is the possibility that the Great Khan emerges from this sector. So, but the only way we're going to get over that is by getting the resources to build an even stronger military. So I think we are ready to unpause, and we can see where all this goes. So right now I'm just sort of cleaning up little bits of the galaxy, ones that might be impediments to my expansion. That does include dealing with the Ransomeers, because of course we've already got we've got a navy, we might as well use it. Equity is currently building a destroyer and a pair of corvettes. We'll see where that goes. Alright, so elections are in progress. Select a candidate to support or spread influence to keep our current ruler for another term. If we do not interfere, a random candidate will be elected. So currently it's Bud Hawthorne. This is going to be his great test to see if he can carry on like his dad. So he's got an extended lifespan. He's actually also warlike, which is kind of interesting. But I don't think we're actually going to interfere with this one. Because these are not necessarily traits that I want to retain, and as much as I love the idea of Bud retaining his father's role, I'm not willing to expend resources to direct the story that way. So, despite expected projections, Rogila 2 has a particularly large solid core beneath its incredibly thick mantle of unique gases. Our scientists recommend further investigation. So I believe they are on their way to the labor study. They are. We have re-elected our current ruler, Bud Hawthorne. And the agenda is Scientific Leap, Research Speed, test plus 10%, which is great news for us. So, speaking of research, with the new mandate of our beloved CEO, Bud Hawthorne, son of Ebenezer, we've been going down the discovery tradition route. So at this point, we're already locked into what we wanted. So our survey speed's already moved up. Research station outpost was a pretty big priority for me, and this is really just to overcome some of the penalties that I'm getting from the Empire sprawl. So in particular, the technology cost is 36% right now, which is not great for me. I'm trying to maintain a technological edge, but I have fewer and fewer resources to throw at that. So after that, we've done Science Division, which will increase my number of research alternatives. That's been pretty good, and this will be especially helpful because I'll eventually be able to guide research down the path to helping me with Empire Sprawl. In the meantime, though, Polytechnic education. In this age of increasingly advanced technology, a basic education in polytechnics and applied science will benefit all of our citizens. This will inevitably lead to more qualified leaders. Leader experience gain is increased by 25%, leader level cap is increased by 1, and then it will unlock faith in science. Pops working with research have their upkeep reduced by 20%. So what that's going to do is give us a big bonus towards consumer goods, but we're not going to get that for another few years. We'll of course get an ascension perk with that as well. It's actually, while we're waiting for something else to happen, it's not bad to talk about some of our possibilities. So right now we've got Interstellar Dominion, and our universal transactions. Now, I sort of question my choice of locking in Interstellar Dominion
Special
now.
project actualized.
Marin Karen, work over flowers. Far-reaching changes to time management paradigms and the way responsibility is delegated within all fields of production and other duties on Halvim Prime have produced good results. The populace has an evident desire, outside observers would call it an outright need, to be in close proximity with the native flora. With clever scheduling and additional checks in place, productivity remains low, but has risen above the lower limit of what can be deemed acceptable. So we've gained some social research. Pheromone workaround has been added, and we get an additional 10%, or not an additional 10%, but we offset the penalties by 10%. So that particular planet. So weak magnetic field, minus 5% to habitability and pop growth speed. Pheromone first stage, bonus to happiness. Second stage, jobs minus 15. Third stage, all migration minus 75. And finally now we will add workaround, which will offset. So we're still at basically minus 5%, but it's not as bad as what it used to be.
Upscaling complete.
Okay, so equity is done. All right, let's get this fellow to build some. We'll start with research and then we'll do mining, and then we will expand to the starbase. Okay. Marin Karen, Pollen Worship. Fringe elements on Halvam Prime have banded together to form a quasi-religious organization seeking to control all aspects of the Marin Karen flower and its cultivation. Their leader, a self-styled green hierophant of this flower temple, claims to speak for all flora and fauna of Halvam Prime and demands exclusive trading rights for the plant. This, of course, is completely unacceptable and impossible, as the native flora of Halvam Prime is of little strategic or economic value and thus may not be brought off-world by law. Unfortunately, they are unlikely to accept this fact gracefully. Worrying.
Upscaling complete.
Okay, so that was a social research center. Let's build an energy mine. The reason for wanting to build some of these sort of energy extracting resources is really just because having more and more energy, unless I hit my cap, and my cap is 52,000. Basically, having the ability to generate more energy will let me deal with inefficiencies in my existing production. So for instance, if I'm not generating enough food, I'm not generating enough minerals, I'll be able to buy it. And if I have enough of a stockpile, then I'm going to be able to weather that storm. Now, if I'd known what I'd known at the beginning of the playthrough, I might have made some different choices in terms of the allocation of certain resources. I would have definitely made certain planets specialize more. And I feel like that's one thing that this patch in particular stresses. So I'll give you a quick example of a couple of the planets that I've got. So Rhizome Capital clearly has an edge in mining that simply does not exist on other planets. And so if I were to fill this full of mining districts, and then I would build a complex that gives a % bonus, the headquarters is just simply going to get a larger bonus than any other alternative. And then we compare that to Yamel Prime, which was, I think, the second planet that I colonized. Actually, that can't be right because well, no, it's pretty close. Obviously, this one only has two. Yes, I did get Deponia, but I haven't installed it because I know I've got a fairly big queue right now and not a lot of hard drive space, Domi. So I did get it, and I know it's one that you want to see me do, but I'm not quite sure when I'm going to have the time for it yet. I might play one on my own just to sort of see what it's like, and then we can take it from there. But yeah, so like this is a perfect example of a colony that I wouldn't want to build sort of a % mineral building on, but I might want to consider building one of my energy nexuses because again, we've got 8 generator districts, unlike what we'd get in one of the other planets. Gaul Prime, another good example of a potential energy colony, and in this case, we've cleared out most of the blockers. Python Prime is definitely one where I'd want to maximize my farming if I can. It's also not clear that so in terms of % bonuses, you don't always get all of them. So Energy Grid, we can get plus 15%. That's a good one. Is there anything else that gives us % bonuses? Not yet, apparently. And I'm definitely covered for energy. But anyways, you get the idea, right? Like, so the idea here is that if you can put in some planning, like, you know, Akram's another good example. If you can plan ahead, and if you can structure your colonies in such a way, I know that, let's say, I'm not going to get robotics in a while, so let's just focus on getting as many trained workers to generate energy as we can on this planet so that we can then build an energy nexus and we're going to get a larger bonus than what we normally do, because of course you're constrained in the number of buildings that you can build on these planets, as well as the specialized buildings. So obviously there's some efficiencies that I could have taken advantage of if I'd known the game a little bit better when we got it, but of course part of the fun is learning. So it's okay, no problem. It's not that up your want to see Chalk playing. Well, I see, the funny thing is I do keep that list for myself, and it's one that, because I'm so slow at getting through games, it's kind of fun that people think I've forgotten about particular games that they want to see me play. And I sometimes play dumb on stuff because I really do enjoy the delight that comes up when I finally do play a game that people have sort of given up hope on. So yeah, it is one that I am definitely keeping in mind. But we have got the Eyes of Sin in here. How are you doing, Eyes of Sin? Lovely to see you. I haven't really I've been talking a little bit too much at the start, so you haven't missed much. How are you? I'm always very happy to see you. Ancient Medical Complex. Astounding news from the RCA Juris. Deep scans have revealed the unexpectedly large solid core of Yogrilla 2 to be covered with the compressed remains of a sprawling medical complex millions of years old. Through this, though the intense... I'm actually having a little trouble reading the screen tonight. I don't know what the deal is. Though the intense mantle pressure of the gas giant severely limits the amount of data that we can extract from the core's surface, Science Officer Wooglam reports that the hidden structures match, beyond a doubt, the technology used in the enigmatic L-gates. The crew hypothesizes Rogilla 2 was a planetary medical facility created by the gate builders millennia ago. At some point, the complex was abandoned, and its automated gas replicators ran unchecked for untold centuries, gradually converting the planet into a gas giant. Incredible. 250 social research, 1 L-gate insight gained, and we add 2, I don't want to say Vespine gas, but 2 exotic gases. Well, I'm already wearing contacts. It's probably because I forgot to take them out last night. All right, beginning of Pollen's End. The Flower Temple and its followers now make up a sizable minority of the population on Halvam Prime, and reports indicate a disturbing change in the movement. Their futile attempts to smuggle Maran Karan specimen off-world have been growing less enthusiastic by the day, as the Flower Temple seems to be transitioning into a doomsday cult. There is likely a correlation between the recent changes in the Maran Karan pollen's chemical makeup detected by atmospheric sensors. A special project has been prepared to assess the risks associated with this, and it is recommended to complete it before something goes horribly wrong.
Situation log revised.
Well, we're already in the neighborhood, so what else do we want to do? Yeah, we'll just leave this the way it is. Okay, so I think I'm ready to dedicate my military towards...
Special project
maybe
actualized.
not. Disaster averted. Quick and decisive action allowed us to identify the risks associated with the rapid changes in the pollen native to Halvam Prime and take the necessary steps. The necessary steps were a complete planetary evacuation and a planet-wide tactical pesticide bombing run targeting the Maran Karan flower and its ilk. The planets were rapidly mutating, and their unique pollen would, had it not been destroyed, soon have begun delivering a potent neurotoxin to the olfactory organs of all sapient life on Halvam Prime. The scientists on the Colonization Council theorize that this is part of a natural cycle on Halvam Prime, and that the pollen's adverse effects on us in the form of a crumbling local administration, the rise of the Flower Temple cult, and eventual pollen toxicity were chance side effects rather than a product of a plant's sinister self-defense mechanism. Regardless, any and all traces of the flower have been wiped from the planet's surface, and our colonists are safe and free of the pollen's influence. As you can see, the only cult that we are interested in is the one of the worm in waiting. So, all's well that ends well. The planet has been purged of the dangerous flower, removing all related modifiers. 1,000 unity gained. So let's figure out what we want to do with this science ship now. We've kind of got we've got this part of the sector taken care of. We're okay here. This little fella's taken a look at this part of the galaxy. So they're dealing with the phase shift freeze. So I think what I want to do, because we're going to send the fleet in to deal with these alien vessels, we'll take this one and we'll move them up to start investigating the territories that'll be opening up. Oh yes, I mentioned this on Twitter. Sensor echoes have indicated the presence of some kind of unidentified object deep within the atmosphere of this gas giant. Let's take a quick look. Okay, I'm happy with where that's going for now. So I wanted to take a quick minute and clarify something on Twitter. So on Friday we were playing Anthem with Johnny, which I tremendously enjoyed. I know a lot of people have sort of opinions about whether or not it was good, or I will say one thing in defense of people who want to get mad at EA or BioWare on it is that when something is advertised as a VIP event and you're supposed to feel special or whatever, we're obviously at a point where we can't always expect everything to go flawlessly on releases, but I suppose there is at least grounds for some sense of disappointment that a VIP event is tarnished in that sense. But the underlying game I thought was very enjoyable, and I am always very disappointed when I see people behave like they were about the Anthem thing, because by the next day I had all the javelins unlocked. I sort of have an idea about what some of the discourse around the game is going to be on release. I think people are going to complain about it having too little content, and I think that fails to recognize how EA is going to be building games from now on. And I think it's going to resemble the Paradox model a lot more, which is you have a base game that is released, and then a very long period of updates. And that's because I think in the end EA would prefer you to get a subscription and to play the games that you're interested in at the time that you're interested in, rather than this rather antiquated notion of quote-unquote buying and owning a game. I mean, you haven't really physically owned a game since you bought one in a box. So, I don't know, it's a shame. I had a good time with it. But what I didn't realize while I was enjoying that game with Johnny was that the Global Game Jam, which I was going to attend, started at 5 p.m. or was it 5 p.m. on Friday? Maybe it was 7. Anyways, it started Friday evening while I was busy playing Anthem with Johnny. It did not start on the Saturday at 5 like I thought it did. I was off by a day, off by one error for programmers out there. So what I did was I built as much of the game as I could in the time that I had, and then I logged the amount of time that I missed as a result of the mistake, and I'm going to take another day to only give myself the time that I left out, because part of the reason why I went to that was to figure out what was easy for me, what was difficult for me, and to sort of learn Unity. And Eyes of Sin actually has seen a little bit of the intermediate product. But once the timer runs out, I'm going to release what I could complete online. Do not have high expectations for it, but there'll be sort of an associated diary with it just to talk about sort of what the experience was. I had a good time of it. Shopify, it's a Canadian company, although some of you may have heard of it. They were the ones to host it, and some of the Dirty Rectangles people were the ones to sort of take point on that. So that was very nice of them. I had a great time, and they did a wonderful job of making me a non-specialist feel welcome. Okay, research complete. Robotic assault army and droid workers. Droids. Upgraded robot workers, these units have expanded movement range equal to that of most organics. Their neural processors have also been greatly improved. So the droid workers, they're a more complex variant of robot, often coming with pre-programmed personalities to better serve their masters, as well as limited self-awareness. With droid technology, robot pops are capable of most pop jobs, but are unable to perform ruler jobs and complex specialist jobs such as research. Well, I'm okay with that because they are still good at energy generation. All right, so I was talking about percent-based bonuses for minerals, and there it is right there. Mineral purification, there's 20% bonus. It is a tricky call. So long-range minerals scanners, I wonder if it does a breakdown in terms of... Oh, it does. So this is great here, right? So when you take a look at the production, so you base generation of 20 minerals, 128 are coming from my stations and 63.6 are coming from planets. So with that in mind, even though there's a difference of 21 months versus 25 months, that 4 months is going to get me a bonus of basically 13 minerals, as opposed to this one, which will, production targets are nothing to sneeze at, but essentially this will gain me a smaller bonus than what I'm used to. It is very tempting to go for super solid material. Obviously, more engineering research will allow me to take advantage of some of these choices, and I clearly could benefit from a Star Fortress. But in this case here, these are great productivity gains, which I really can't turn down at this point. So we will carry on, and then I believe the fleet should be on its way to the target. Let's watch this is the Federation fleet. I don't do this sort of stuff with my own private fleets.
Competitors engaged.
That was that. Okay, like I said before, so there might be an argument for me expanding out to here, but unless I'm actually able to make the move on it, I think I'm going to keep that as a barrier from my ally. We'll head back to Equity and do our thing. And of course, the advantage now is that this will give me a place for my science ship to explore. And I should probably put a leader on this fleet. How they catch up, I'm not sure, but I'll save that mystery for the background lore. I'm just trying to think of any other steps that we can take. So we do have some colonies which are being built. And I do have two stations that I can
Potential
build.
market survey completed.
Okay, carrying on with the Howling Vortex. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until I actually colonize... I'm going to wait until I actually colonize the planets that I want, because I have a feeling I'm going to still have to deal with some piracy. But Zelisur, how are you doing? The RCA Juris has picked up a strange energy signature coming from somewhere deep inside the atmosphere of Rogilla 4. It appears to originate from a structure of some kind, possibly the remains of an orbital station, but the atmospheric pressure makes it impossible to approach. Nevertheless, scans of the unique signature have yielded a large amount of valuable physics data. And nothing else to report. So this is not a bad system to have locked in. I mean, it's giving me the thing that I want the most right now, which is research. And obviously there's a bit of a cost for... There is a bit of a cost for adding any new any new bases in order to obtain research, but this is just the reality of what I'm facing right now, so I'm just kind of accepting it. I'm taking it.
Research actualized.
And we're doing our best with what we've got. Following 6 months of number crunching, theory busting, and heated debate, the RCA Hemivalis crew has devised a method by which the planet's particle fields can be locked into a nominal state, preventing their rotation between dimensions. A sufficiently tuned pulse of energy should freeze the veil in one state, locking it into stable form as a Gaia world. So the veil will be permanently transformed into the Gaia world. Physics research gained 350. Doing well, going to play this game tonight after dinner, so you figured you'd watch a stream to get you motivated. Well, I really appreciate you picking this one. I know there's probably bigger folks who are kicking around playing the game right now. This has definitely been a much more plotting approach to Stellaria. I mean, I'm already pretty slow in playing this game, but I've taken a bit of a plotting approach because this is the game that I started when we were given our press key to Megacorps, but I'm having a wonderful time with it. If you don't mind, Zelisaur, I know you're enjoying dinners, so I probably shouldn't be asking you too many questions. But what are you currently playing? Are you like in the middle of a playthrough with a species right now, or are you going to be building a new system or a new civilization? Okay, research complexes. As we explore the galaxy, we continually encounter new materials and substances that are unfamiliar to us. Cataloging and analyzing these discoveries require new facilities. I believe this is an upgrade to my existing research. I'm really not in a position to have enough consumer goods to maintain these, but I think the explosion of research is worth it, and I'm willing to put energy credits to backing it up. So we'll take a minute and we'll see what the bill will be for that. So we've got Research Institute. That's going to be a very time-consuming one. We can get bonuses to physics research. We can get better sensors. So normally to me, the question would be between better sensors or physics. So the physics would be 26 months and subspace sensors 35. I think I'm going to go for the physics research, partly just because it is aligned. Well, you know what? I bet the subspace sensors were as well. I don't really have a great justification for it, but I do tend to like to, where I can, to build these up. Yes, but you installed a few mods, so you'll start a new one tonight. Do you have any plans in terms of what type of species you'll be playing, or is it a mystery? Okay, so we're just going to carry on as we were with this before we locked in the Gaia world. So let's just set them up for a quick little tour in the systems. It's very unlikely that I'm going to actually colonize any of these areas, but seeing as it is sort of along the rim, if I could say, if I could get a base here, then I've got, so a base here would mean that I've kind of got something like this, with of course the devilish marauders right in the middle, so I technically don't really have any of that secured, but what else are we up to? I suppose I should decide what other ships I'm including in there. So we've got the salvage, we've got 2 destroyers and 4 corvettes.
Future market survey complete.
Let's do... Let's... We'll leave that for now. I do need to see what my research is at. You know what? Let's just take a look at the capital. So, don't want to upgrade that. So these things are going to cost me 6 more consumer. I'm going to need to really really crank out the consumer goods. All right, the Karabnar refugees. Transports carrying a large number of Karabnar refugees have crossed into space from the direction of the Karabnar marauders. These exiles have apparently been expelled from the decrepit space stations they once called home in some sort of ritual designed to act as a means of population control in times of limited resources. They have been allowed to settle on Halvum Prime. They're welcome here as long as they pay up. You'll be playing bureaucratic peaceniks. Very nice. Is it going to be, when you say bureaucratic, is it going to be a megacorp, or is it going to be just...
Upscaling complete.
Oh yeah, actually that's in it, because so you could have kind of like a Roman-style bureaucracy and go for something like, go for a, like imperial bureaucracy. All right, the pirate base, while fairly inconspicuous, is obvious when you know what to look for. A fleet in confused formation slowly drifts out from behind the repurposed mining complex. They were obviously not expecting company. Open comms. The captives need to be ready. Hello again, Chief Executive Officer. I take it shareholder ships are the cause of all this commotion? Our hosts seem to be ready to leave their posts. Boarding this place would probably end badly for everyone involved, but if you attack the base directly, I think we can make a break for one of the lifeboats. Please try not to blow us up on your way out. Yeah, that's the one thing that I've really struggled with in Megacorps is that well, as you can see, like I'm at 174 on my Empire Sprawl, and even with the bonus, my capacity is 90, so I'm definitely paying a lot in terms of my expansion. All right, Business Management Nexus. The invention of subconscious focus testing has led to immense efficiency gains in our marketing and sales departments. By applying these methods, our sapient resource department... It's really interesting that it doesn't talk about any of the bonus resources that it needs. Anyways, by applying these methods to our sapient resource departments, we achieve a bold new paradigm in corporate management. I'm liking these words. Okay, so administrative cap is a really high priority right now, 40 versus 54, but honestly, I hate to say it, but reducing the time it takes to research this is a number one priority, because that's the thing that... So it's not just that there's the bonus to the society research that I had there. That is a bonus to all my types of research through the reduction of a penalty. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Competitive station engaged.
All right. Let's watch the rescue operation. We'll watch it in slow motion because this is a very pretty game.
Future market survey complete.
As the pirate base slowly tears itself apart into a savage chain reaction and instigated by our military vessels, the search for the captive crew of the Luxion begins. If they made it to a lifeboat, they should be attempting to hail us by now. Scan all frequencies. Chief Executive Officer, this is the crew of the Luxion. The plan went off without a hitch. Once you started bombarding the base directly, the guards took to their ships and we were able to break down the cell door. The lifeboats were guarded, and it seems you kept the pirates busy enough that they did not care much about our escape. Welcome home, jailbreakers. With the crew of the Luxion safely on their way back to Rhizome capital, I should have taken the screenshot. There's, if you're wondering, some of you may be wondering about the screenshots and all of that. I still am maintaining the Twitter account. I haven't posted to it recently, but I am going to put some more scheduled updates in terms of major events that happen in this story. So, and you've not actually played an actual Megacorp yet. The branch mechanic is a really interesting one, and I actually find it a fairly powerful way to... So I'm making way too much money, so I just opened a bunch of branches even though I don't really need to. But what you can wind up doing is you can create these buildings that will give you sort of a bonus to the resources that you need. And what I've kind of found it to be... So it's a neat way, if you think about it, it's a neat way that Paradox has implemented a mechanic where sort of you benefit from your, you know, nominal rivals doing well, because if you open branches on planets that have very large populations, then you're just going to get more opportunities to build these buildings. And so you can sort of build this strategy around contacting new civilizations and basically selling them things. I mean, I love this new set of mechanics overall, but I'm particularly intrigued by just how, I don't know, just how interesting it is to play a megacorp. Like, I really like the way that they've added some new branches to, so to speak, to the gameplay. Like, I think it's one of the cases where it's not just fun to play like a more pacifist style game, but it's one where it sort of feels like you have a bunch of mechanics almost designed to encourage you to play that way. So whereas something like Inward Perfection, you're getting some big bonuses for being a pacifist, but it's sort of the trade-off that you make. Being a pacifist is not necessarily the dominant choice, other than the fact that it's a necessary condition for that other thing that you really want. Though, again, I might just be talking my own book here. All right, with the crew of the Luxian safely on their way back to Rhizome capital, disaster has been averted. The corporate people are sure to glory in the decisive action of Rhizome capital's chief executive officer. The situation with the kidnapping ransomware pirates, as well as the pirate band itself, has come to an end. Some questions remain, mainly regarding the much larger piratical navy the captives claim to have seen through portholes shortly after their capture. But considering the circumstances, it can be safely assumed that the threat appeared to be much greater than it actually was. The ransomeers are over and done with, so much needed influence in my coffers. Savior modifier added for 120 months, 10 years, gaining 10 happiness. I'm always happy to get more happiness, so I think we'll just hit the upgrade button on our main fleet. Although I do want them to go back to equity. Didn't even get a scratch. Alright, where's that science ship I was kicking around? Are you the science ship I was kicking around? Yes, you are. It's the whole point of getting rid of the amoeba here. Oh, you know what? I should probably send the fleet there next. So kind of the point of unlocking that, or unblocking that, was just so that I can start doing some more expansion. But what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to take a small detour with my existing fleet. I think their strength is something like 4K, right? Yeah, so 4K will be able to handle whatever nasty mining drones we have. Speaking of... Okay, just the debris. Construction. So we've dealt with the energy. Oh, I should probably put that to normal. Okay, so I built the mine. I don't really think I want to just be spending all my influence on... I don't want to be spending my influence on just building new colonies. So it might be the case that I actually don't have anything for this construction ship to do for the next little while. I'm going to leave them in the capital.
Upscaling complete.
And the reasoning for that is just I kind of want to have something in the heart of this of the empire to be able to handle eventualities. Now this is a great example of something where, so obviously I'm spending some of my sprawl and some of my, this is kind of the ideal candidate in my opinion. So this is one where, yes, I'm spending some empire sprawl and I'm spending some energy to maintain this, but because Simplum is I don't know if that's because of the bonus or if that was always the case, but I'm getting 14 from one single resource, as opposed to, let's say, oh, you know what? I can build on Cybrix Alpha. So I could compare that to, say, something like I don't know if it's Aswil or Aswiri. This I'm just getting 4 engineering from, and in this particular case, it's at least off of one system. But let's say that was two engineering. that's really not the best system for me to be spending the sprawl on. But right now I'm just kind of keeping all my borders sensible at the moment. So also let's not go nuts. So we'll take care of the mining first, then we'll take care of the mining in Cybrex Alpha. Okay, so we can upgrade you. And I think we will let the breeze, yeah, we'll let the breeze heal up.
Outlier identified.
Through hard work and experience, Chief Executive Officer Bud Hawthorne has developed new skills. He's got an eye for talent. We briefly detected some unusual energy readings emanating from this planet. It might have been a glitch in our systems, or it could have been a sign of something more. Well, let's take a look at the something more. I don't always take the opportunities to sort of look at the details, but I do think this is a very beautiful game. Let's see if we can get the angles right on this thing. Obviously, if I had the controller enabled, I could use the I could sort of use the thumbsticks to move in closer on that. But if you can get sort of angles that look like this, especially on a planet that's already a little fiery, it's definitely looks good. Oh, sorry, I'm not unpaused. It's okay to set up nice photos, but yeah, what do you think of that? Actually, speaking of, there were the crystalline entities, which are passive for us, but we can do something fancy with this too.
Potential market survey completed.
A remarkable array of gases are being vented on Hoshfir 1A, ones not usually found on molten worlds. Some of these gases show promising industrial value. You can't quite see the entity, can you? Maybe we can try the cluster. I wonder what'll happen.
Outlier identified.
A microsingularity recently intersected Leostara 1, passing straight through the core and emerging on the other side of the planet. The encounter does not seem to have caused any permanent damage, but it has altered the energy output of the planetary core slightly in a way that defies our current scientific models. Further study may be warranted. Fascinating. 3 physics to... So this is the one drawback, is we're really not hurting for physics research right now. But optical sensors isolate a cluster of shapes on the barren surface of Gemma 2A that could be buildings. Well, we'll deal with a challenging one. So this one, I don't think we have any good shots with the crystalline entities. Oh, there's the apocalypse music. I really liked the apocalypse starting music. Let's get out of there so we can enjoy the tunes. Okay, Helvum, I've been neglecting. We can get a Masamigoma. How you doing? Good to see you. Okay, so on our Gaia world, we can employ people, but what do we want to employ them with? Ash Oak and their crew have made a surprising discovery on Hoshfir 1A. The molten planet is home to an exotic array of extremophilic microorganisms. These bacteria live deep inside the volcano vents that scar the planet, thriving in the extremely high temperatures produced there. This is unprecedented find is our first known example of organic life forms flourishing on molten planets. Moreover, the extremophiles on Hoshfir 1A are in fact responsible for the rare gases detected in this thin atmosphere, producing these valuable compounds as a byproduct of their metabolic processes, or metabolic processes. 150 society research, and again, so the nice thing about this is I've got a source of 3 exotic gases at least within my borders. Oh, actually, is Hoshfir? No, I don't think Hoshfir is in my... Alright, well I have the option of adding it, I suppose. But yeah, we'll have access to something that I need for my upgrades. Upgrades to my my fancy fleets. Words. I'm doing all right, Masamagoma. Nothing too big to report. I talked a little bit about the Global Game Jam. I don't know if you guys want to know a bit about what it was, I don't mind sharing, but it kind of felt that there's a little bit of radio silence on that, so it might only be interesting to me. But I had a good time at it. The only regret that I really have is that I wasn't able to lock in the project that I wanted. And that's partly because I showed up too late. I misread the start time. Eyes of Sin says, Ash complete. Oak, does he keep a bunch of strange little alien pets in red and white pocket dimension spheres? Somewhere beneath Liastora 5's unctuous clouds, unnatural structures silhouette themselves against the toxic surface. Okay, so it looks like we ran into something nasty, and looks like there are more space amoebas who are pretty mad about the fact that we got rid of the last ones. Well, I got news for you. The breeze is now free. Actually, let's just double check what else we're looking for. Took me a minute to realize Eyes of Sin's comments, but Eyes of Sin really likes this basically Final Fantasy TV series.
Ships upscaled.
Where there's sort of this guy called Ash Ketchup, and he goes around kind of finding these little animals in the world and putting them in his lunchbox. And I hear it's very popular. Some of you might have watched this show, but it's not one that I've personally witnessed.
Outlier identified.
Sensors pick up unexpected activity from an isolated point on Rigel 5's frozen surface.
Research actualized.
Okay, 10% bonus to mining output. We should be... Actually, that's also for energy as well, so I'm particularly happy about that. Increased scanner range allows us to more quickly identify mineral concentrations and focus our mining efforts there. So quite a few options available here. I kind of feel like... Oh, no, not exotic gas refineries, because that won't allow me to mine what I need. So, civilian fabricators. Ah, this is where the specials. Okay, so until I get access to the rare crystals, civilian fabricators won't mean much to me. I am really tempted to just go straight for the cruiser at this point. Okay, so I think I'm going to focus on colonization for the next little while. The Exile. The readings originate from a small research outpost, which Rhizome Capital has no records of establishing or indeed authorizing on the surface of Rigel 5A. It is staffed by one shareholder scientist, a fairly talented and industrious one, if their research on Rigel 5A is anything to go by. There's a problem with regards to their identity, however. We have been unable to match them against official state records, and they refuse to identify themselves, save for stating that they are in exile. They have expressed an interest in returning to Rhizome Capital and serving Rhizome Capital directly, on the condition that the RCA Hemivalis immediately depart Rigel 5A and no shareholderships ever return there. So, it's kind of tempting to go for the Exile, because I seem to recall they're a pretty good scientist, but the catch is we've got Flora Hawthorne, Wooglam, Bud Bloom, Basil Maple, Ash Oak, Rowan Garland, and Rose Hawthorne already working as scientists. We have got simply too many scientists. So in this particular case, we'll bank the 350 science research and call it a day. And we will colonize the veil for the greater glory of Rhizome capital. Cold and empty, there is nothing unusual about the research outpost itself. It is little but a temporary shelter erected against the savage elements, allowing surface-level planetary study for a limited time before it wears down and conditions become untenable. The outpost on Rigel 5A is nearing the end of its lifespan, but the planet's intense chill has yet to critically degrade the impermanent structure. The equipment, functional, cheap, intended to be abandoned, is well used, and the local databanks are filled with detailed but ultimately mundane accounts of the planet, as well as the simple experiments that were carried out in its harsh environment. Curiously, no closer examination seems to have made of the mineral outcropping the outpost's foundations rest on. Scans by the RCA Hemivalis indicate that the geological formation, a mountain mostly buried under ice, may be partially hollow. More alarmingly, Science Officer Ash Oak reports that the sole inhabitant of the outpost, the mysterious exile, has gone missing and is nowhere to be found. Puzzling. So, Gaia World 100% want to colonize. In fact, that is the same claim that I will make for this one. So this is going to be another big hit to our Empire Sprawl, but the Gaia World is pretty spectacular. And of course we get more war. This is actually going to be something a little bit more, it's going to be something a bit stronger, so we'll see how this fight turns out. Nope. In the meantime, esteemed Chief Executive Officer Bud Hawthorne, a decade ago, the Rhizome capital pledged to support the artisan troupe, and so you have. The time of your patronage is coming to an end, but we would be remiss not to ask. Would you care to renew your subscription to the finest arts and crafts in the galaxy? It's a deal. We're holding up reasonably well. God, the sound in this game is just something else. Yeah, it looks like we lost some. So I think it's a destroyer and a corvette. Alright, let's see what the butcher's bill is. Yep. So really, I need to be prepping against a 9,000 strength fleet for this one. I mean, in truth, it's going to be worse than that, because if I get sucked into one battle with these, it's going to be, it's not just going to be one engagement. It's going to basically be everything in this sector taking me on. And right now I'd be wiped out by one of their dwellings. Excuse me. Alien barracks. The silhouettes of the silhouettes discernible from orbit are indeed buildings, and closer inspection reveal them to be an obvious martial nature. While abandoned for some time, though very recently on a galactic timescale, Science Officer Woolgum believes that the secrets of alien tactics may yet be exhumed from beneath the dust that covers the decaying barracks and looted armories. A special project may be issued to study the remains, and study them he shall, using the fancy keyboard command Control-Shift research project. It puts it to the top of the queue without ruining my opportunities to fulfill the rest of my queue that I set up. I'm very happy that, I think it was the Stellaris account that shared that. Okay. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at what happens.
Special project actualized.
So there's a couple of ideas that I have in terms of placement for my star bases. I definitely want them to basically build up my fleet cap. I want them for defense, but they're also going to be my only means of combating piracy. So what I want to do right now is I want to put down some bases just to see where I stand as far as some of these, as far as my existing routes are concerned. If there's any weak spots that I need to shore up, I want to put the bases down there first, and then, assuming that those are okay, I'm going to start placing some bases to sort of help with what might be my immediate invasion worries. There's actually a fairly decent argument for putting one in Yiralam, and it's not even to help with the Marauders, because obviously it's a really unfortunate border that I share with them. They've got multiple means of coming in, and the fact of the matter is that I am probably not going to be strong enough to push them back anyway. But for instance, there's sort of one main connection between me and a rival, and I want to keep some of my defensive and offensive options open there. So, Science Officer Woolgum's thorough xenohistorical analysis of the military installation on Gemma 2A has yielded few tangible results. The base was constructed before the planet turned completely barren, but it is unclear if its current inhospitality is the result of armed conflict or some more peaceful, even natural process. What can be deduced from their strategies and tactics is armed conflict does not seem to have been far in advance of our own. On the upside, Science Officer Woolcam claims to have drawn much inspiration from the alien remains. And these guys are sitting idle while they wait for the hunters. Not my favorite thing. It's very likely that these guys have actually left this system, but I don't want to lose a science ship to my impatience. Where is the... Yeah, so these guys should be on their way. I guess I can assign Daisy Bloom, because these guys are going to get an upgrade and a healing, and also a couple of new ships. Or rather, a couple of old ships to replace the ones that were lost. And Yuka is our pet amoeba. We will not send Yuka to go kill its own kind. That would be unkind. We will, however, admire the beauty of creation. Greetings from New Baldorak. Things are progressing quite well here on our new colony. However, we have a small request. Chakbi Rade, one of our colonists, misses her family and friends on Baldorak terribly and wants to go home. Her whining is driving us crazy. If it's not too much to ask, do you think you could take her back? For those of you who do not recall the Dathnak, these are the gaseous beings that we helped out earlier and really cannot get enough of asking us for stuff. I also need to make a decision on that colony before too long, so... very well. Excellent. Hopefully this won't put too much of a strain on your resources, since you'll only be transporting a single individual. We'll make the necessary arrangements on our end. I just broke the news to Chakbi, and she's spinning with joy. In fact, she's spinning out of control now. You'll have to excuse me, shareholder friends. Okay. So I still haven't made a decision on the Gaia world, but I know, so thinking long term, I'm going to be putting some pretty heavy strain on my, consumer goods. And I know that because of the, I sort of know that because of the 6 extra consumer goods that I'm going to need for each research facility that I have. Now, again, I'm not going to be able to build as many as I originally thought I could, but it's probably not a bad idea that I just get these things taken care of. So I'm going to do a quick run just over my options to make sure that I'm not shortchanging myself. But we've got the amusement megaplex for bonuses to amenities. We've got the commercial forum, which will produce more branch office value, but I mean, we're already drowning in energy. Fast food chain will help us with food. We already dealt with our food shortage. Mercenary liaison office, I mean, it's helpful for military, but we've got a couple of bases to help out with that, so I'm not too worried about that. Private military industries. I'm not quite sure why it produces what it does. Oh, no, alloys. Okay. Minerals, Unity, and consumer goods. I would very much be tempted to build another public relations firm for this. But in this particular case, I am going to go for the virtual entertainment studios just because I know the thing about consumer goods is that they really are the thing that I don't want to waste the slot for. And I know I'm going to have to at some point, but the more I can avoid that, the happier I'm going to be. Okay, speaking of things that I don't want to have to build, we are currently at a negative for amenities, so as much as it pains me, I think we will go for a mall and just be done with it. So it's trade value and amenities as opposed to... I need to remember which of these gives us... Okay, so there's research... soldiers, robots, resource silos, police, Unity. Okay, 3 housing, 3 amenities. This really doesn't feel worth it. At least where I'm at right now. So Hollow Theaters is kind of interesting because they turn consumer goods into Unity and amenities. We'll put that as a possibility. Apparently 4 and plus 20. Amenities and pop growth, but not as many as the alternative. Energy grid, which not my best option for that. 10 amenities, 10 trade value, consumer goods, alloys, yeah. So in this case, I think the Hollow Theater is the right call. One, because of the amenities, but also because of the Unity, which means that my third building can actually be Unity focused, such as the Ministry of Culture. Okay, Havlem. Oh, Havlem, what am I going to do with you? I think I'm going to punt and I'll build the corporate culture site because I can. Especially because I'm getting these penalties on my Unity. It probably doesn't hurt to be able to do those kinds of upgrades. And my final building on Rhizome Capital. Let's choose wisely. I can go for yet another research building. Oh, that's a really important point to remember. This one is going to be the administrator who has the most benefits to research. So I also want to make sure that these 3 have as many research facilities as I can manage, all things being equal. So, I mean, in one sense, it would make sense to put a stronghold on my capital, but I don't think that's the right call. Research is the top priority right now because of my ability to just my ability to hire like an intellectual governor. I'm great for amenities. I'm fine for housing. I'll probably need to upgrade it, but I can use a city district for that. Doesn't make sense to use that for food. Yeah, I mean, it seems silly, but research until I can come up with some better ideas what to do with these slots. In fact, one thing that I might eventually want to do is try and flip out these alloy mega foundries and these civilian industries to actually take these and replace them with other, like, move them to other worlds. Alright, Zalisar, thank you very much for hanging out. I don't know if this is quite your cup of tea, but I appreciate you bearing with me. I wish you a lot of luck on your own game. I think what I might wind up doing on this one is I might save this for streams and I might open up my own, because I think you're bureaucrat. I work in the civil service, so I actually really like the idea of playing bureaucrats. And I've never played a substantial inward perfection one, so I think you gave me an idea for my own private playthroughs. Have a good game. Thank you for stopping by. Okay, so we've got our research labs. So yeah, one of the things, I can't do this completely, and I think it does make sense to have things like the holo theaters on the planet anyway. But what I might want to be doing, things that don't generate amenities, things that don't generate unity, so things like alloy mega forges and whatnot, I might want to try and take those off-world and replace them with research centers. Oh, well, no worries there. If you want to hang out, I'm always happy to have the concurrent views. But yeah, so Yamal, similar idea. It's currently got civilian industries. So in an ideal world, I would be able to replace these with research centers. On Gull Prime, we're currently building holo theaters. Well, that I kind of need to do for the amenities, so that's okay. Now, Python has already got civilian industries, actually. Now, I'm really curious why I built luxury residences here. If I were to get rid of this, I think this would start to smack me in terms of amenities. So I'm not gonna do that. But I should probably reconsider how I've got this built up. On Okram, we're only focusing on civilian industry. In fact, the next upgrade that we have will very likely be amenities focused. And on Halvam, we're building the corporate culture site. See, the thing is, it's a Gaia world, but I'm thinking probably these new Gaia worlds I'm colonizing, I think I might ship some of my consumer goods onto those planets. Just want a quick look at how happy everyone is. Okay, so people aren't too happy on Gaul. I think that's just the climate. Alright. So it's going to be a slow process of sort of deindustrializing. Well, it's not even really deindustrializing, but basically moving the manufacturing out of sort of the capital sector and into some of these other areas. But I think the long-term gains will be pretty substantial. And again, this is just coming back to that idea I was talking about a little bit before in terms of specializing, or something that I would have done a bit differently at the beginning of this playthrough as opposed to now, is I would have focused a little bit more on specialization, because I clearly have the ability to do it. I've just sort of I've not taken the opportunity because I've always realized them a little too late. Tall man alive, how you doing? Through hard work and experience, scientist Woolglam has developed new skills. The atmospheric patterns of Gemma 3 are highly atypical for a gas giant of modest size. And let me just make sure that my fleets aren't too idle. I know I've got a science ship that's not doing anything.
Research actualized.
Alright, well these guys are just hanging around waiting for the amoeba to show up. Okay, so bonus to physics research. I mean, again, it's not like we're really short on it, but seemingly erratic behavior of tiny things can dramatically alter the way that we think about bigger things. So energy credits is really not a high priority for me right now. Shields are, and then advanced research complexes sound great, but I really don't have the resource that's required for that. So we'll go for shields just because it's the lowest cost military upgrade. Doing fine, but you just realized that one cannot watch a Stellaris stream on phone, can't read. Well, I can do my best to try and, I can do my best to read it out, but I know it's probably not the best format for, I know they brought it to console, but whether or not they can bring it to mobile is another question. Zelsar said, you ended up creating a civ that might have been OP. This is your vanilla playthrough. Apocalyptic civilization that is, with the extremely adaptable trait. Literally every planet is 80 habitability or higher. Holy smokes. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. And just thinking of it too, like obviously one of the things I'm waking up to in this game is the benefit of some early, you know, I mean, it's always been advantageous to build early on some planets, but the fact that you really want people to be able to work all of your tiles, like that's going to be ridiculous. Deceptive giant. What we had assumed was an abnormally small gas giant is in fact not. Beneath a deceptive cover of thick dust swirling in the upper atmosphere lies a regular planet. A barren planet, but a planet nonetheless. This has proven quite embarrassing to the astronomical community of Rhizome capital. Gamma 3 is revealed to be a barren planet. I'm kind of curious if we get to see the transition. We do. Remarkable. Yeah, not even close. Urgh. Mouse is too sensitive. Really, I can't get that perfect eclipse. I give up. Can't do it without controllers.
Survey complete.
All right, it's only 2 more in sort of my immediate expansion areas. In the meantime, so we've got 1 colony ship on its way out.
Upscaling complete.
Python is definitely pretty occupied. Okay. Let's imagine for a moment I do want to do this process of transitioning my industry.
Combat detritus reprocessed for a cleaner galaxy.
Through hardware experience, Governor Iris Life has developed new skills. I think what I'm going to start with is the civilian industries on the capital planet. It's not an exciting choice.
Upscaling complete.
But the thing is, as soon as I spike one of these, it's not just that I need to build it again, but I actually need to convert it into an alloy megaforge. So, looks like I've got a big negative on my consumer goods now.
Upscaling complete.
Okay, Akram is suffering unemployment. Why? Clearly there is work for them. Apparently they only do specialized work, though. Oh. I messed up. I closed the factories for no reason whatsoever. Okay, our edicts are done. Let's take a quick look at what's going on with these. So the edicts were kind of a dump for some bonus resources that I had. But in this case, so education campaign will give me a bonus to leader experience, and it's so inexpensive I might as well go for it. Recycling will help me with my consumer goods, so I think that's why some of that suddenly cratered. Healthcare will improve my growth speed, which is fairly important. Inferior imaging on Ipraga 4A suggests massive interior imaging suggests massive underground caverns wait below the planet's surface. This may be worth investigation. We're still at deficit of 2. And I'm not entirely convinced. So research grants is always tempting, but it influence is a pretty precious resource for me right now. So I think in this particular case, we will refrain. Okay, grinding lattice. Iostera 5 is crossed by overlapping mineral composite bands that are elevated above the harsh surface by bands that are elevated above the harsh surface by tall, flexible pylons. Clearly of alien origin and constantly agitated by atmospheric winds, the pylons sway and the overlapping bands rub together to produce sonic waves to shareholders inaudible frequencies. Science Officer Basil Maple reports some trouble isolating this audio from the natural background noise of the planet, but also notes that the mineral bands could, should we so choose, be broken down and efficiently recycled by Rhizome Capital. Make preparations for salvaging the mineral bands. 6 minerals, which again is not... I don't want to be too dismissive of minerals. I think that's easy to do in this new patch, and it's not really justified. But in this particular case here, I didn't have too much use for... I don't have too much use for the minerals at the moment. Okay, the moats are going to be good. In fact, I think I'm willing to wait in Halvem. I also need to think a little bit. It's tempting to build a base on Halvem so that I can collect that trade. Now I am a little surprised with the... Oh, come on, man.
Upscaling complete. Upscaling complete.
Okay, we're back to capacity. Let's get that. I have my main fleet, which is in need of a destroyer. And a corvette. And music to my ears, so we're going to need to make some decisions. They're going to be exciting decisions. So, tradition time. Obviously, discovery, our curiosity about the universe is what got us this far, and there's still so much left to discover. So this will be faith in science. The public has come to regard science as something almost akin to religion. Their faith in it is absolute. There is no question in this universe that is so big that it cannot be answered by science. Pops working with research have their upkeep reduced by 20. This will help me not only with consumer goods, but this is also going to help me with my plans for the capital system, in which I make them all sort of research focused. So we'll carry on with that. Adopting all discovery traditions increase our research speed by 10%. 10%, that's in addition to already the bonuses that we're receiving, so we're pretty heavy research oriented. Again, that's mostly to overcome some of the penalties that I'm facing by the Empire Sprawl. And we get an Ascension perk, and this one's going to be a little tricky for me. So I mentioned that I was a little disappointed in myself with Interstellar Dominion, because I don't think it is as good as it used to be for this playthrough. I kind of reflexively picked that rather than thinking carefully about why I might want to pick that. So let's think a little bit about what we've got. I do like bonus sensor ranges. And, you know, writing... Oh yeah, so the code I wrote during the global game jam made me very angry at myself, because I knew it was bad when I was writing it, but... the flesh is weak. The limits and constraints imposed on us by our feeble organic bodies are simply, unacceptable. To reach our full potential, we must turn to cybernetic implants. Reductions in robot upkeep, bonus to population assembly speed. We will prepare a special project to enhance our citizens with cybernetic implants. Very tempting. I don't quite have the robot population to justify this, and the reason I'm building robots really is because they're already less expensive than my existing population, but we'll consider it. I think we have better options. Galactic Force Projection. The fleet is the instrument by which the will of our empire is made manifest. We will live or die depending on its strength. So 80 bonus naval capacity, 20 fleet command limit. Now, one spectacular reason for choosing this would be to deal with my rowdy neighbors of the Marauders. But let's think about this in maybe some slightly more practical terms. So a 50 strength fleet right now is about 4K. So we add another 20 to that. Generously, we'll say that's 6K. But the other thing I could look at is like, okay, let's take my existing force, which in this case is currently hovering at about 5.3K overall. I'm not going to count the Federation Navy. We'll maybe add it to the total or something like that. But if I double that, that gives me 10K. That's still not going to be enough to take on the Marauders. So will it help? Sure. Is it going to be enough? No. So I should be considering an alternative. Grasp the Void, Starbase Capacity +5. That is actually very tempting, because that's an indirect way that I can go about sort of boosting up my my fleet cap as well. And depending on how clever I am in terms of the placement, it'll also help me build some of those choke points. So if I go particularly crazy, one thing that I could do would be to sort of entomb the Marauders with these massive defensive platforms that are maxed out, and I'd still have the 2 star bases I haven't built yet, as well as 2 from Grasp the Void. But the catch on that is that I would just be dedicating so many resources to the eventuality of the Marauders emerging that, or the Great Khan emerging, that it's a pretty weak way to use an Ascension, and I've already kind of blown one of my Ascensions. Eternal Vigilance, to display weakness is to invite attack. The price of invading our space must be so high that as few as possible are prepared to meet it. Starbase damage +25%, defensive platform damage +25%, defensive platforms +5. So this is a very similar argument to Grasp the Void, except of course that it's a good defensive one. This, again, is a very tempting choice, which maybe under other circumstances I might take, but I have a feeling there are 2 or 3 alternatives that I might prefer. Technological Ascendancy, pretty much a non-brainer, another 10%. So that's, and particularly for discovery, so this would be databank uplinks, so research output, bonus of 10 from my space stations. Then we get the 10 from the discovery bonus, and then we would get the 10 from technological ascendancy. Now, it wouldn't be the full 30%, because obviously my research bonuses on planets are not going to be counted towards the first 10% that I mentioned. But clearly my technology cost of +37% is pretty heavily blunted through the selection of technological ascendancy after doing the discovery tree. One Vision, so that'll give me a bonus to monthly unity and governing ethics attraction. I'm less worried about the governing ethics, but again, my Empire Sprawl is causing my tradition adoption costs to increase to 63%. It's taking me a lot longer to get these than it should. Now, the one that I am really tempted about is the Mastery of Nature, and I need to read this again because I know they've changed it. So clear blocker costs are decreased. Now I've already cleared most of the blockers that I can, so that's not as big of a deal. And then the mastery of nature decision. So this is a decision that permanently increases the maximum number of districts a planet can support by 2. It can be only performed once on each planet. So I am hitting my capacity on certain planets. It may not necessarily be that I get... So the thing to remember here is that the additional districts, I believe they're referring to are... like Yemel might be a good example. Yeah. So when they say additional districts, I don't believe they're talking about buildings. I believe they're talking about these districts. But still, 2 additional buildings is nothing to sneeze at if I'm at capacity. Executive vigor, bonus edict duration time, not bad, but I don't take advantage of edicts as much as I should. And transcendent learning again. Bonuses to leader level caps and leader pool sizes are nice. The question is, are they nice relative to some of my other alternatives? So let's say mastery of nature, 1 vision, technological ascendancy, eternal vigilance, and the flesh is weak. So essentially half of these are the most interesting. We'll say mastery of nature. 2 additional districts are not as important to me because I'm covered for pretty much my basics. It's actually the specialized goods that I need. So let's say that mastery of nature can wait for another day. 1 vision, technological ascendancy, both appealing for essentially the same reason. And I would sort of argue, because I'm generating 531 versus 189 research, the percent-based bonus is better towards tech. Eternal Vigilance is a little too passive in my opinion. It's one that would really help me if the Great Khan emerges, but I just really don't think... I really don't think I'm well served in a situation where I need to make... Because I've already expanded so rapidly. I think because I need to make the most of every decision that I make, and I've already sort of made some inefficient choices, it's a lot harder for me to justify doing something which is more precautionary when each new bit of territory that I get costs me so much. So let's eliminate Eternal Vigilance for the moment. I'm curious if it's telling me what my robots are costing me. I guess 27? Yeah, it's kind of hard to say that energy is my big worry on this one. The assembly speed is maybe a little more tempting. But again, is the assembly speed better than, say, bonuses to research or Unity? So Unity is super cool, and normally I would go for it, but in this case I think a technological ascendancy just gives me such a large benefit. And it's one that will sort of allow me to solve some of the other problems I'm running into. I think in this case we're going to go very heavy on technological edge. I'm also going to take a quick minute to make sure that I've not disabled any other buildings like that other planet. Yamal Prime got a new governor. So this one
complete.
I'm covered for everything else, so I think we're going to do the same story here. Even though I'm short on consumer goods, I'm going to focus on research labs, and then we'll just make sure that these other territories have the consumer goods built up.
Future market survey complete.
Yes, Zalasaur,
Colonial
and it's actually one that I would argue for this particular playthrough did not serve me that well because of the sprawl, and I didn't quite appreciate how quickly sprawl would run away from me. So The best way that I can articulate it is that I think having a very good industrial base just gives you enough options that even if you make mistakes earlier on, you're usually able to sort of outproduce, and your options for production will give you more flexibility than your enemies. So in this case, it's almost like, you know, the American...
I would never want to belong to any club.
Nick Slicky, thank you very much for the follow. Yeah, well, I mean, as it was, I was still... so the thing to keep in mind is this playthrough, like, this was back before Megacorp was originally released, so some of my early decisions are not necessarily the ones that I would have gone for originally. But I really do believe in expansion, because the thing is that one of the best ways that you can get the resources that you need is by having a large population base. Like, you know, if you have a bunch of people who are available to work in the factories and you give them the tools that they need to produce your stuff, that's just simply better than hoping that you're going to be able to sprawl out to that one dream system that may or may not be out there. So in my particular case, like, I've still been able to work with the sprawl penalties. It's just that I've had to sort of dance around them. But yeah, in general, I do sort of, I expand fairly rapidly, and I feel that a lot of these changes, particularly to Empire Sprawl, have been designed specifically to stop the massive land grab that constituted the game before Megacorps. And I think it's the right call. It definitely makes things harder for the way that I play, but I'm not convinced that... You know, I'm not convinced that the game should necessarily be tailored to making life easy for me. So, backscattering spectrometry... I'm sorry, guys. Let's try that again. Backscattering spectrometry sensors. Spectrometry. Yeah, there's two R's in there. Okay. Backscattering spectrometry... Backscattering spectrometry sensors indicate the presence of valuable substances, Jesus Christ, beneath Cormagon 2's noxious clouds. Clearly the weekend is catching up with me. Admin cap isn't really a hard limit, but it does play a role in expansion. Yeah, well, and that's just it. Like, clearly I've been willing to essentially ignore that stat. And the way that I look at it is basically to say, okay, you know, this is what it is. Like, I'm going to have to
Research actualized.
Hey, more administrative capacity. So now we're only suffering 50% penalties for tradition adoption and 30% for technology costs. Like, my view on it is that essentially it raises, so basically what it does is it raises the marginal cost of adding a new system. So it is very hard for me to argue to take the Galarum system on its own, because I have enough energy and 7 minerals, and there's no offsetting research, and I know that I'm going to suffer penalties to research each time I add one of these. However, looking further down the line, I see that Hoshir has a unit of exotic gases, and if I expand out to Hoshir, then I'm going to be able to upgrade one of my research facilities, and one of my research facilities is going to be cranking out a bunch of extra research if I use that particular specialized resource. And so those are the kinds of expansion trade-offs that I'm thinking about, where previously I wouldn't consider it at all. And I think that's, again, I tend to think that that's a fairly sensible way of doing it in a game like Stellaris, because I really feel like, I mean, so, like, I'm obviously not privy to the conversations that go on at Paradox, but I'm assuming you don't make these big, complicated grand strategy games and say, you know, okay, we want to give you lots of things to do, and you're going to have lots of options, and you can play your way, or you can do this alternative history. Oh, but we don't like that strategy you're doing, so we're gonna put a hard cap in that. At that point, you cease to have as many interesting decisions to make, and the experience isn't as satisfying. So I think instead what they do is they basically give you some more interesting trade-offs, and they say, okay, well, if you want to blob out, you can. We're not going to say that you can't blob out in this game, but just keep in mind that if you do that, here are the following things that you will suffer. If you just keep gobbling up every system that you can, then you're going to find that research is harder to do. And maybe if you're not particularly effective at managing your research in light of that penalty, well, maybe your smaller neighbor, yes, you denied them the resources that they needed, but it turns out that they're actually now head and shoulders above you technologically, and they have a Death Star approaching your system. That sort of stuff I tend to find is a really satisfying way of addressing certain strategies. It's very clear, by the way, in terms of development that they've always done this. So they didn't like the fact that players were using military ships for exploration early on in the game. They wanted the process of slowly uncovering the map to be one of the central ideas. I actually think there's a video of Heinrich Furreus describing that as one of the original ideas for Stellaris, that it's kind of like this first settler in civilization and space almost. Civilization, the game, obviously. So, obviously they needed a couple of patches to finally really lock that in and stop people from behaving in a way that was maybe inconsistent with the experience that they'd intended and thought would be the most fun. But I don't know. I really don't feel like they're the kind of... I don't feel like the ideas the dev team have tend to be this really hard, fist of God coming in and smashing your favorite strategy. It's more they either strengthen something, they either strengthen a good alternative to it, or they they introduce a mechanic that results in other interesting choices. Yeah, exactly. I did it too for a long time, just because that's, if the game lets you do it, why not? I think in this case I'm going to go for the hyper entertainment forum. It's hard for me to argue that the dangerous wildlife is something that's keeping me from being productive. Star-based capacity maybe, but the hyper entertainment forums aren't going to take me a long time to study. And again, that's one of the things that keeps me coming back to games like this, right? Is that, there'll be a lot of talk, and I mean, I used to play games like Dota 2 and that.
A system has been surveyed.
I had a perfectly pleasant time sort of talking about optimal strategies and, the patch notes have come, what heroes won, which heroes lost, which ones are obviously being hobbled. It's kind of fun to play those kinds of little gossip games. But I don't know. I just sort of feel like in the case of Stellaris, especially as a game, so Stellaris is sort of unique that in the sense you really can have a perfectly even start for all of the civilizations. It's not particularly interesting. I mean, obviously the fact that I'm next door to a big angry, xenophobic empire, and the fact that there can be advanced starts and whatnot, I just tend to think creates for... I just think it it makes for slightly more interesting games, to be honest. But if you wanted, you could force it to be an even game. But again, because this thing, like I sort of feel like in the case, unlike a game like Dota or something like that, you can sort of afford, like, I don't think Europa Universalis 4 is all that worried about balance. Like, if you want to play Ulm, that's on you. Like, you are not going to be able to take over Russia on turn 1 as Ulm. So I like it, the fact that even though Stellaris sort of on paper has more balance at the start, I kind of like the fact that they're still taking advantage of the fact that it's not exactly a single player game. Obviously, a lot of people play this thing multiplayer, but they're focused on giving you sort of some interesting decisions to make, as opposed to trying to pay lip service to this sort of, oh, this thing needs to be esports ready or whatever. Anyway, sorry, I'm babbling on a little bit too much. I think the weekend's catching up with me. I know I've been a little bit dazed today. Chromagion 2 is exceptionally rich in minerals that are unfortunately of no use to us. However, Science Officer Basil Maple believes that many elements in the crust of Chromagion 2 can be transformed into potentially more useful forms through positron bombardment. The RC Merotipanis has requested that Rhizome Capital set aside 100 energy credits for the purpose of this project. 100 credits is, couch cushion change at this point, so very well, ready the positron charges.
Situation log revised.
Okay, so I think I need to... Oh, I totally forgot that we agreed to transport the little Dathnak. Okay, let's not automate this anymore. Let's research. And what science ships do we have in the area? Not a lot. I think in this case I'm just going to build the anchorages. I forgot to upgrade this fleet, unfortunately. That's fine, we've got a lot of alloys.
Special project actualized.
The crew of the RCA Merotipanis are pleased to report that the experiment was a success, and a significant number of dense mineral veins on Chromagion 2 have been transmuted into usable resources. So total of +6 minerals split over two entities. Although not really in a spot where I can take advantage of them. Sorry guys, just need to follow up 1 second on a message.
Ships upscaled.
Okay. Yuka can't
Future
be combined
market
with
survey
anyone.
complete.
So it can't be combined with anyone. I think these are all just gonna hang out until I find a better use for them. Yeah, I think at the moment we kind of sit pretty until circumstances force us to make other decisions. I don't really have that much to do for that ship. And here we're still waiting to be able to claim this system.
Outlier
This is gonna
identified.
take Oh, okay, apparently they already finished. Investigation of the caverns below the surface of Ipraga 4A revealed them to be filled with a silvery liquid metal that flows from cavern to cavern in gleaming rivers, pooling into underground lakes. More surprising still is the discovery that this metal substance shares many key properties with organic life forms, including responding to environmental stimulus and exhibiting self-sustaining processes. It remains to be seen whether this exceptional metal should be classified as truly alive, but it may have several practical applications for engineering technology. So we've gained further progress towards living metal. It's still a very expensive one for me to research. And this is a particularly valuable system now because it has access to some resources that we need. So curious, the geoscape of Tunabo 3 is dominated by what appears from orbit to be silvery metallic crystals of dimensions we've never before seen. From orbit, they resemble skyscrapers. Closer study is warranted. Okay. Again, I've been making this thing hang out so I can take advantage of this.
Research actualized. Upscaling
Okay,
complete.
I've got cruisers, although I don't have the capacity for them. Originally devised as an experimental next-generation colony ship hull configuration, the design's ample hardpoints make it ideal for carrying heavy weapons ordnance. Appropriate music. So you can get weather control systems. I'm assuming that's city district housing +1 on all planets? 200 months is still too much for living metal, as cool as it is. Autocannons are cool. Rare crystal mining, even cooler, because that's going to give me an advantage towards consumer goods construction before too long. And at some point I do need to address my shortfall in terms of consumer goods, but again, I can afford to run the deficit for a little while, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for my planets to naturally grow. You're here for galaxy conquering. Not too much conquering going on, Dr. Frankenvinder.
Research actualized.
One of the things that's happening right now is I'm sort of suffering the consequences of some very large early expansion that I did, which is coming in the form of a bunch of research modifier penalties to me. And I don't know, it's an interesting challenge to deal with. It's one that I don't find entirely unpleasant, but it is kind of a unique challenge to run into, where I realize that I've built my empire in accordance with the previous patch, and I'm playing a megacorp which is designed to be played in a very different kind of way. And except for being beside the Marauders, I can't complain too much with my location. I kind of have everything that I need. But I'm now sort of working around a bunch of penalties that I've sort of self-inflicted, and I'm seeing if I can sort of outrun those penalties before something like like the Great Khan event pops up to murder me. Nanite crystal lattices. Detailed analysis of the enormous metallic crystals dominating Tunabo 3's landscape have defied all expectations. Science Officer Basil Maple is excited to reveal that these oversized crystals are in fact comprised of trillions upon trillions of deactivated nanites. Their molecular structure matches no known empire's nanotechnology signatures, making their point of origin indeterminable. They may have been deposited on the planet by some unknown spacefarers for an unknown purpose. As far as Basil Maple can tell, the nanites compiled themselves into perfectly oriented crystalline lattices that replicated until a point at which they became deactivated. While the crystals they created do in fact resemble buildings, they are entirely uniform in composition and cannot possibly have served any such purpose. Incredible. 250 engineering, 250 social, and an additional L-gate insight. These new shield generators represent the next generation of energy screens, replacing the older deflector technology. They offer significantly better protection. Okay, so chemical plants are cool and all because it does allow us to get more motes. And there is an argument to be said for building some chemical plants to produce... I should probably pause this for a second. So the big argument for going for one of these, it does take up a building slot, but what it does is, in exchange for giving up one building slot, that will give me the capacity to be able to upgrade another one of my alloy manufactories. But it's not like I'm really in need of alloys at the moment. So it's cheap, but it's not my best choice. I can do an antimatter reactor. For additional energy. I can do subspace sensors, which I said I wanted to do earlier. Those will take a couple of years, or in 15 months I can get additional research alternatives. Now this is a really tempting one to take just because it does give me more options. Actually, you know what? So I really do want I really do want better sensors. I really do want better energy, but I actually think this one is a better long-term choice because I know I'm going to keep kicking that can down the road. So let's just to mix my metaphors, let's just rip the band-aid off and be done with it. And it looks like I am going to need to find a lot of sources of gases because all of my Unity and my research require it.
Research actualized.
Not gonna lie, you hate Marauders enough to just turn them off. Yeah, you and your buddy, when you first played the new patch and new DLC, ran into the same issues. Well, again, it's pretty obvious that the name of the game originally was like it was a dominant strategy to rush and blob out. It's sort of like, you know, the colonization of the new world. You know, put down as many flags as you can and keep your opponents from getting it. It's actually. I'm doing a little bit of research into some old conflicts that I think are they're like known, and they've even been the subject of some games, but I don't feel like it's as well known as it should be. And I've got one really fun bit of history which I will share at some point, which actually begins with basically somebody like people sort of like racing to put down plaques of like, oh, you know, the king says this is ours. Well, nuts to what your king says, because we think it's this. There's a couple of rather funny stories that come out of that. And Dr. Frankenvinder's asking, what kind of empire am I playing? Well, I'm so glad that you asked, because I've not done the introduction to this empire yet. So how about I just go to the species menu? Rhizome Capital is pleased to announce that it has successfully completed its first round of seed capital. Our plants are already running at full capacity, getting ready to offer you the finest goods and services the galaxy has to offer. Tax season got you down? Our bean counters at Deloitte are licensed in every jurisdiction and legal system. Need help with housework? Rhizome Robotics solar-powered photosynthetic assistants are ready to attend to your every need. Under the sage guidance of Ebenezer Hawthorne, will make you green. Rhizome Capital. Leaf growth to the experts. So this is my plantoid megacorporation. We are, we're a megacorp. Our ethics are egalitarian, xenophilic, and materialist, and our civics are brand loyalty and franchising. Now, I am perfectly aware of the fact that franchising is intended for creating sort of vassals and things like that. But the idea here was as soon as I knew that the patch was going to be Megacorps, I knew I really wanted to use my Plantoid DLC to take advantage of the pun on opening new branches. And the idea that I had for the plant-based Megacorp, the wording of the two were perfectly in line with sort of what I imagined for them. So even though it is not a strategically optimal choice, and I remember when I first did the stream, like there's a couple of guys who like, you know, that's for vassalization. You can't pick that one. And I'm like, you know, guys, it's a single player game. If I lose, you know, I don't get to keep the energy credits when it's done. I really do like jumping into sort of the role play of Stellaris, more so than any other of the grand strategy games. So, you know, it's definitely one where any any semblance of optimal strategies was gone from species creation. But I've been having a lot of fun with this one, and it's not just because the patch is really interesting, but this is just a fun little little species that I've made. And for those of you who've been with the stream for a long time, you know that I really do enjoy making new species and civilizations. Hyper Entertainment Forum, these massive entertainment complexes where dreams come true. Shopping malls, restaurants, amusement parks, virtual arcades, and more. You dream it, we are it. Lots of expensive things for, I think, my weakest research. No, physics is my... No, engineering is. Okay. Yeah, something happened to social research to launch it on. Okay, Galactic Administration's very tempting one. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. I really do think the weekend's catching up with me. I know I actually also have an Elder Scrolls episode to record, so I may not necessarily... Well, we're getting close to finishing anyway, but I might need like a half hour to myself just to make sure that I can sustain the broadcast, or the recording for the broadcast. So I'm really tempted for Galactic Administration, because that's going to be an upgrade to my capital, or not my capital, but my the Capitol building, but also because of the administrative path. So this technology will lead to further advancement in capital buildings and influence gain. Upgraded planetary capitals are required for high-level buildings. Are there alternatives? Ooh, naval capacity is actually a really good one too. I gotta do it. My only regret is that I've not really had any big highlight event happen. I know we've obviously got these cases where sort of my resources are fluctuating, but I'm not that worried about it because I've got some long-term plans in terms of how to fix all of this.
Future market survey complete.
Although speaking of which, my
Potential
amenities
market survey completed.
are down. So I think in this one, as is the usual plan, I think my best way of getting amenities are my holo theaters. They do wind up gobbling up a bunch of consumer goods, but honestly, I don't mind retooling my production to produce more consumer goods because this is going to give me more. It's going to give me more unity as well. That's funny, you like the use of the pun. Having fun is the important bit. You always prefer playing spiritual empires. As far as megacorps go, you like using the amazingly cute butterfly spirit and establishing the mega church of cute and spraying the great holy word of cute to the galaxy. That is actually really charming. And yeah, like I know some people were mentioning that they saw a lot of materialist empires, and you can definitely see in terms of the timeline, there are some times when I kind of get into a mood, and I will definitely produce a lot of... Well, you know, what I think it is if it's the same day, I kind of wind up making a few of the same kind of species, or sort of like variations on a theme. But one of the things that really appeals to me is the idea that you can basically do all of science fiction in Stellaris. It's probably the major reason why I like continuing to play this game. Our science officer has found an anomaly, but it will require extensive probing, but it could garner a significant find. Well, let's research it. Also, I've got additional capacity, so let's say, it's upgrading. What was the cruiser? Will give me 4, so that'll take up all my space. But okay, Hythea. I think in this case here, building out my consumer goods is the call here.
Upscaling complete. Upscaling complete.
But yeah, I don't know. Like to me, the variety and all the different opportunities that I have to sort of express myself in the species are the big appeal. And sure, I mean the strategy game is a part of it. I don't want to play a game where I feel like, you know, I never had a hope from the beginning to be able to, you know, achieve my goals or whatever. You know, it's obviously fun to win, but sorry, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm set up for. So I think this is the problem. Like obviously I want to make sure that I'm doing the thing. So obviously if they build a strategy game, I need to make sure that I'm at least in line with the things that they're spending the time building. So it's not going to be space sims for me, and I'm not going to stay on one world and, you know, try and fill it with as many consumer goods as I can to, you know, to make my my creature happy. But on the other hand, like it's just kind of like this is one of the reasons why I don't like reading about metas and given patches, because I feel like if somebody says, you know, oh, X is super powerful right now, you know, you need to play X or you don't know what you're doing. Well, what that does is that closes you off from all the other alternatives. And I feel like this game in particular is really built around being able to have those experiences with variety. I kind of think that's the point of it. So, but I have not played a mega church yet. I actually really want to try one. The RC Meropantis crew is reporting that they've found something spectacular on Tunabo 9. On the surface lies traces of an explorative expedition of another civilization. Left behind are some well-preserved documents and artifacts. The proposed action by Chief Science Officer Basil Maple is to send these text findings to our homeworld for translation. There is also the possibility to sell them off to a private investor. So, yeah, 1,000... I mean, especially now... So I was talking about this when this first came out. Minerals are not useless now, but they're a raw good that needs to be turned into a refined good, either at the most basic level, consumer goods or alloys, and then at even more sophisticated levels into sort of these rare goods like the exotic gases or, you know, volatile motes or something like that. So it's not nothing to be offered energy. I mean, energy is what you'll use to buy these other goods. But I sort of feel like any of these events where the payoff comes in the form of minerals, they've gone from being an almost like essential thing to pick up to like, no, like if, you know, if this was consumer goods, if this was alloys, maybe we'd be talking. But at this point, I almost never, I've gone from like always getting a sudden, you know, dump of minerals to being, yeah, you know what, this is just not worth it. So Dr. Frankenvinder says, you love the versatility of Stellaris, and you could see, if in the right hands, several books and series being written as each game unfolds. Whichever. Yeah, I mean, that would be cool on its own if you decide to write them up. And I know people seem to put a lot into their after action reports, but I believe there's actually, I think Paradox even released a book of Stellaris stories. All right, we'll send it to the homeworld for research. And social research, 16 months. But I think I'm willing to pay the price on that one. So. I also think I freaked out a little bit on my...
A system has been surveyed.
I think I'm still gonna need to put more, I think...
Upscaling complete.
I think I am still going to need to put more towards my consumer goods before all is said and done. Okay. Unfortunately, Rose Hawthorne is no longer with us. We could put Flora there, but she's only level 2. Got a level 4. So it's time we upgraded him. And then the RCA Juris. Heath Hawthorne. Well, obviously we got to keep the Hawthorne family name going, and as it happens, they're the youngest, and it's actually a pretty good scientist trait for somebody in one of our ships, so it was meant to be. I actually really love the fact that there are sort of these influential families that have emerged in the lore of Rhizome Capital, so... okay, so we were... The original purpose of this was just to sort of lock in this bit of territory for myself. That's now been dealt with. This group is kind of taking care of the southern areas. So I could get these guys to look to the west. Or alternatively, I can get them to look... Okay, we've already got somebody on that, so... Yeah, I think I'm going to get them to head down and see what's on this side, because obviously we're not going to be able to go through our rivals. We're not going to be able to go through the stagnant ascendancy. We've already explored this, so let's have some fun with this. It's going to take me a while to get where I need to go, but I should be able to get a rough idea of what's going on this side of the galaxy. Part of this is also just an argument. So if I find enough cool stuff in sort of this area, it does sort of make an argument for me to try and push out to get a base here.
Special project actualized.
And the reason I say that is that if this is sewn up, then essentially I kind of get to claim the bottom left-hand corner as my little playpen, except for the Marauders. And at that point, I can start being a little more selective in terms of where I want to, where I want to dedicate my resources and such. But obviously, that's getting way ahead of myself. So, a single cargo tug hauling a gas canister has arrived at Baldorak under escort by RCA Ornithornacus III. The contents of the canister have released into the gas giant's atmosphere, safely returning the Dathnak colonist to her home. Good riddance. Scientist Flora Hawthorne has become more experienced, but with this experience has come an increasing stubbornness. The scientist has become quite obdurate and is having difficulty accepting new ideas.
Outlier identified.
Repeated scans of Tunabo 6's surface give an inconsistent sensor readings, almost as if the planet itself was in a constant state of upheaval. Sounds fun. Okay, so obviously the first step here is to build the mining stations. The whole reason why we expanded out this area was so we could get the volatile motes. Secondary consideration will be to try and get Rugilla, just because that'll give me a little bit of extra science. Okay. We've got quite the deficit on food now, and I'm thinking this is because...
Potential market survey completed.
Looks like the AI is sort of abandoning some of my farms. It's so interesting they're calling it an agro-world. So yeah, we've definitely got space for farms.
Ships upscaled.
There's definitely an argument to be building up food. I think I'm going to leave it at that for now. We definitely have a big food deficit, but I also think this is partly just because of the distribution of the workforce rather than a lack of infrastructure. So I'm going to do my best to... One of the things that interests me the most about the way that this particular patch works is that it's one that definitely rewards you for subtle course correction. So a really interesting story to, especially, I mean, like, I wouldn't recommend somebody go through like all of the VODs for this, but a really interesting comparison would be to go back and take a look at how the consumer goods situation was handled versus the food situation. So consumer goods, I could sort of see ahead of time, even when it was positive. It's that, okay, so I'm going to focus a lot on research. I know that research is going to take up consumer goods, and I will get some, you know, reductions in those costs. But the fact of the matter is I don't have enough to keep me going on my existing path. And in the case of food, it was always like, yeah, it's getting a little bit low, but then it bumps up again, and then it gets a little bit low, and I'm just not going to worry about it. And you can see that in the case of consumer goods, we have a deficit, but it's a perfectly manageable one. In fact, it's one that really probably just this construction on Hythia, it's only that thing that's keeping us from being positive. On the other hand, food like really is a problem. It's only one that's going to get worse. So the thing that I notice about Megacorps is that it's one that if you notice things ahead of time and you do just a slight nudge for your empire, it'll set you on the right course. And if you try and just like wrench the wheel each time, if you try and correct as soon as you see a fire that emerges, it's one where you can really things can get out of hand. And it's because just this gradual increase of your population is the thing that determines the special buildings that you can make. So again, it's a really neat little dynamic that they've added in the game. The very geological structure of Tunabo 6 is indeed in flux, driven by what Science Officer Basil Maple assures us is a tectonic process as fascinating as it is esoteric. What is of more interest to Rhizome Capital is that we may be able to strategically halt the planet's ceaseless chaotic self-transformation. In short, a near-instant stabilization of the planet into something slightly, if not entirely, more habitable is theoretically possible. Basil Maple estimates that an additional 200 energy credits will be needed to power thorough mapping of the planetary activity and determine the validity of what they have termed a surgical terraforming strike. Actual terraforming lies beyond our grasp at present, so this is an exciting opportunity. Give them their extra credits, we'll see what happens. And introspective prioritization. Oh! Science Officer Basil Maple reports that Tunabo 6 can indeed be terraformed. The narrow window of opportunity is expected to open shortly, as this planet enters a particularly unstable phase of its cycle lasting a couple of months. Basil Maple believes that the miniaturized explosive charges delivered to the planet's crust and strategic irradiation of the atmosphere during this time will halt Tunabo 6's tumultuous changes and stabilize it in a form somewhat more suitable to sustaining life. A special project has been issued, but we do not have much time.
Situation log revised.
All right. Self-evolving logic, introspective prioritization. So let's just take a look at what our options are here. I think they all cost over 10 now. Well, there's plasma throwers, but... you know, a research institute is kind of tempting because it does give me a big... research bonus. Yeah, I gotta go for it. Okay. I'm not letting you run away.
Special project actualized.
Science Officer Basil Maple is proud to report that Tunabo 6 can now be reclassified as an arid rather than a barren planet. This grand experiment has greatly enriched the shareholder sciences. 350 physics and 350 engineering. Behold the arid
Research
world.
actualized.
Okay, crystal mines. Mining these crystals without damaging or even destroying them is an extremely delicate process. It requires advanced equipment capable of pinpoint precision. So the main reason I got this one was in order to be able to build the better... oh, such luck. The point of that one was to make sure that I was able to get the better consumer goods factories when the time came. But I have been wanting to get the gas extraction for a while. It is very inexpensive. It'll cost me 14 months, but compared to some of the others, you know, living metal is still going to cost over 100. Exotic gases, rare and exotic gases with a variety of different uses, particularly in the operation of advanced energy-based weaponry and force fields. Some of these gases can also be used as starship fuel or even as recreational drugs. So we started with the planet with the pollen that was getting everyone high, and we're finishing with the extraction of other narcotics. Shareholders, I have been asked to approach you on behalf of the Baldorak Science Academy. Although we Dathnak don't possess much in the way of technology, we are certainly capable of higher reasoning. A few think tanks have spent the last several years studying theoretical physics, and we would like to share their findings. Perhaps the data will be of some use to you in the empire-building activities you solids are so fond of. You know, this is the first time I've got an unambiguous... I don't ever remember if I got the Science Academy before. This is actually really nice. 350 physics research. Yeah, no problem, Dr. Frankenvinder. I'm probably wrapping up pretty soon as well. I think tonight... So one, there's not been a lot happening on the stream. I know I'm probably not on top of my game. I asked a couple of people just privately. It's like, are you still watching the stream? And I haven't gotten any responses back from them. So
survey completed.
I don't know if I want to call it a bit of a bust, but I maybe could have done better tonight than I really did, and I think at this point we'll accept it as
upscaling complete.
Maybe one of the more building up
Good
casts.
Is where you find it.
Cool. And I'll leave it at that. You know, they can't always be 7-hour streams. So. But yeah, have a good one, Dr. Frankenvinder. I hope you have a lovely evening. We finally settled Mardak Val's paradise world, Paradaya, and our citizens are rejoicing at the thought that one day their seedlings may frolic among the sandy dunes, lush gardens, and crystal springs of Paradaya. So, about time, and Paradise modifier added for 120 months, or we'll see about that. Oh, well, thank you, Zalisar. Actually, so... I try. This is a really bad. This is a very bad tendency of me, which is to get a little too self-critical and to express that on the broadcast. And the one reason for it is I definitely don't want to turn the. I definitely don't want to turn the broadcast and sort of, you know, I'm not feeling like God's gift to casting, so you guys need to protect my ego. But I will admit, like, sometimes I'm not a very good I'm not a very good judge of whether or not it's working for people. And I think that's partly because I am somewhat comfortable with silence on the part of a broadcast audience. I really love the way this game looks.
Actualized.
I am somewhat comfortable with a quiet audience, in the sense that I understand that while I might be active in individual chats on Twitch, that's not necessarily the way that everybody experiences it, and just because people aren't active inside of a chat doesn't mean they aren't enjoying your stuff. So I've made my peace with that. I've been able to manage it, but especially when I'm a little tired from a weekend, I sometimes sort of lack my bearings in terms of my ability to entertain. So I will admit, while I would love to say that I am a confident and well put together broadcaster, it does actually mean a lot to hear somebody say that they liked the broadcast. As silly as that sounds, you know, you would have thought that after doing this for a while, I would have gotten used to, you know, I would have gained a certain degree of confidence. But it actually means a lot when people say they like the stuff. So thank you for that. That makes me feel like the cast wasn't wasn't a wash. Okay, special project completed. After many weeks of study, our expert linguists have unearthed the meaning behind the documents found on Tonabo 9. The documents were philosophical ponderings of a famous scholar only referred to as Telesia, the teller of tales. Her teachings have provided us with much insight into how to better gain political results via applying different states of mind and use larger-scale questions as the focus for reform. Gives access to the Master's teachings, Philosophical Mindset, Empire Edict. Let's just take a quick look at that edict, because again, one thing that I think I can personally grow on in terms of Stellaris is becoming a bit more effective in my use of edicts. There's actually two levels of edicts that I need to pay attention to. So there's the ones that consume influence. The reason I'm not going to use the ones that require influence is that I have a few expansion plans still. I was saving my influence originally to get the Galactic Market. We successfully got the Galactic Market. Then I needed to save my influence to be able to drop colony ships on some of the Gaia worlds that I had available to me. It is a very pretty planet. This was the Paradise planet that we were looking for, Eyes of Sin, so we just got a special event about colonizing it. So this is a very gorgeous game. But yeah, so I've always had an excuse for not using these influence-based ones, and yet there are some things that would have really helped me in some cases. So, for instance, I essentially bought some of my neighbors in terms of getting those commercial agreements, but clearly diplomatic grants would have helped me a little bit more in terms of getting that trust built, getting what I needed done. Another example might be, Land of Opportunity. We've usually been beating out our competitors in that sense. But let's say maybe something like research grants. I've been talking about how I want to improve my research by quite a bit. The way I tend to think about this stuff is I say, okay, I get about 3 influence I get 3 influence a month. So what does that work out to be? I guess that's so in 11 months I get 33. Wait, does that make sense? Yeah, 33 months I get 99. Double that. 66 months. So I think it's 10 years worth. 12 years and 6 months. So in one sense, like, it's not a terrible use of my influence, but essentially what it's saying is that I am locking in. So it's saying that basically I know what I'm doing for what does that turn out to be if it's 60? Sorry, I'm not thinking straight right now. What did I say that was before? I need to derive this again. Okay, well, if I just do... Okay, wait. 200 divided by 3 is 60. No, it's 60. Okay, 67 for the sake of argument. So essentially what I'm looking at here, I'm saying I'm basically locking in 5 years worth of influence in order to get a 10% bonus to research. Now it's for 12 years and 6 months, so it's a decent enough trade-off. But again, I'm foreclosing on farming subsidies, let's say, which would help me with a short deficit or map the stars or what have you. And that's sometimes a harder one to determine. So for instance, I've got a bunch of planets here which might be nice to expand out to. Well, each of those are going to cost me, well, this one's 105, but that's because I don't have a neighboring slot. So this is going to cost me 52. That's going to add up after a while. So like I don't generate enough influence in a year to be able to colonize an extra zone. And to me, I mean, I think some people just gain a really good intuition for how these sorts of things work, which is fine, right? Like you play the game the way you want to. But personally, I always tend to I actually find a lot of things work better when expressed as a trade-off. So in this particular case here, I'm saying, it's like, okay, am I willing to lock in 5 years worth of influence in terms of expansion? And in this case, I'm going to say yes. And one of the reasons I'm doing that is it's actually helping me protect against myself, because I have been expanding so rapidly, and because this number just keeps creeping higher and higher, and I'm sort of suffering the cost in terms of higher resources, limiting my ability to expand out to these other areas is not the worst thing that could happen to me. So I may come to regret it. There might be some cases where I'm like, oh, I really wish I didn't spend that influence on that foolish thing like extra research. But this is probably something I should have been doing a little bit earlier, because in the end, it's something that helps me not expand too rapidly, but number two, it also helps me get that technological edge that I've been talking about. Anyways, I did say I was going to wrap up relatively soon. I don't know if I'll be able to make it to a full 3 hours, but we'll try and get a few more minutes out of this, seeing as Eyes of Sin is back. And I don't know, do you guys want to hear about the game jam thing I worked on, or do you just want to wait for the actual game to come out and its associated diary? Because I can probably fill 15 minutes on that, and I don't know how much is going to happen in Stellaris to motivate it. We're receiving a transmission from the Independent Space Station of the Zero Corp. They appear to have successfully translated our language. Welcome to Zero Corp. We are a business conglomerate operating out of the Rint Beacon system, specializing in trade, the very building blocks of civilization, as we like to say here at Zero Corp. Please do not hesitate to contact us if you are interested in making a good deal. Perhaps you need materials for building warships. Perhaps you need them for building orphanages. Here at Zero Corp, we make it our business not to care. Okay, I'm really curious about We Seek Your Expertise. Ooh, wow. These guys just got a lot more interesting. Okay. This is a product that we here at Zero Corp are particularly proud of. Our medical division has recently begun refining a gas with unique properties that will significantly ease the often difficult process of adapting to a foreign planetary environment. It is, however, unlikely to be compatible with alien physiology. We are willing to export our exotic gases to you for a period of 10 standard years, after which the contract will have to be renegotiated. Okay. So let's just take a minute here. So the upgrade, so it's going to cost a dump truck of exotic gases, but I happen to have 5, so we are going to spend the 50 energy credits to pick this up. That's the Zero Corp way. Our freighters will begin making deliveries immediately. By purchasing this project, you agree that Zero Corp cannot be held responsible for any adverse effects that may result from its use, including but not limiting to skin irritation, psychotic episodes, ocular discoloration, aggressive mutation, increased colonist suicide rates, precognitive trances, biosphere depletion, dangerous stranglet production, micro black hole generation, grain elevator explosions, societal collapse, mass extinction events, unexpected supernova detonations, the complete or partial destruction of your star nation, sudden gamma ray bursts, time travel paradoxes, vacuum metastability events, universal entropy, the collapse of the space-time continuum. We're interested in something else. Nothing for now. Goodbye.
Upscaling complete.
All right. Thank you for humoring me, Sin. The Eyes of Sin, by the way, got to see what I was working on over the weekend. So I won't give all that. Some of the details will be in the little diary that I write for it, but it's like I think 3,000 words long now, so it's a bit of a long one. The way the Global Game Jam works is that at I think it's like 5 o'clock. Basically, it's at the same hour for everyone. They all start at the same time, but it's local time. So the prompt sort of is revealed across the world as the time passes by.
Upscaling
and
complete.
the ideal behind it is that you will make a game based around that theme. So I looked it up, and last year's theme was
Potential market survey completed.
last year's theme was transmission, which I actually thought was a really good theme because
Upscaling
it's
complete.
one of these ideas that can have lots of different
Market
meanings.
outlier identified.
Our science officer has found an anomaly. It will require extensive probing, but could garner a substantial find.
Upscaling complete.
Okay. Obviously, I'm still chewing through as much influence as I can, but... But yeah, so I thought transmission was a particularly good prompt because if you think about it, it allows for a lot of variety. So, for instance, transmission could mean, say, the transmission on a car. And I'm actually going to change this around because we've got specialized resources that I can exploit.
Upscaling complete.
You know, you could say, okay, it's the transmission on a car, and I'm gonna make, you know, some game around that, for instance. Or you could say, oh, it's about the transmission of ideas. I'm gonna make a game about transmitting ideas. Or it could be diseases.
Outlier
You could
identified.
make a game like Plague Inc. Using the theme transmission. An ancient orbital shipyard drifts in silence above this world. It has suffered significant battle damage, and entire sections of the facility are missing. I see we are of the same mind, Eyes of Sin. I forgot that I got an additional 10 capacity, so... Oh, I screwed up. Explosion in the sky. The planet Capella 5 is home to a marvel of nature. Giant colorful explosions appear in the sky, a result of the chemical composition of the atmosphere reacting to the sun's gamma rays. Students and senior scientists alike are spreading this find like a wildfire. It has generated quite the spark of interest for the scientific field amongst our people. So bonuses to survey speed and anomaly research speed, which is good. I'm going to take a minute here. So let's say that, actually, let's just combine the fleets again. In this case, we'll take the Livius class. We'll take a destroyer. We'll take a pair of corvettes. That's 8. And we've got... How the hell do we already have a cruiser in this thing?
Upscaling complete.
Sorry, I kind of like creating sort of slush fleets of all my weird ones. Lancer class? I think somewhere I messed up. Oh, that's right. We got a bunch of... sorry, I am going to get back to the Global Game Jam, but while conducting their survey of Yiva 5A, the RCA Meropantis detected the remains of an automated shipyard in orbit. It is at least 1,000 years old and seems to have been subjected to a heavy missile barrage, but one of its manufacturing bays is still in working condition. Science Officer Basil Maple is confident that power can be restored to the shipyard, but it would be a significant project.
Situation log revised.
I like significant projects. But it's a construction ship, so I do have one of those. Okay. I need to be a little more thoughtful about how I'm distributing these ships, so Um, okay. I need to find something that's size 4, but I don't think I have any. So I think we'll take the derelict with us. So anyways, obviously I'm very fond of the
Potential market survey completed.
of the transmission one, because what it invites is some very creative interpretations of the theme, and I think that's what a good prompt sort of should do. It should sort of inspire you to come up with an original idea. I'm sorry, I'm really not thinking about how to build this up. It should sort of encourage you to not just tick the box for a theme. Like, obviously it's supposed to be something to stimulate your creativity, but it's also particular. Like, I don't know about you, but
Research actualized.
I particularly like coming up with ideas that you sort of see that smile that people get when they hear your idea and they're like, oh, that's really clever. Or they never thought of it that way. So, this year's theme was, what does home mean to you? And I kind of know what they're trying to do with it. I think they're trying to encourage a certain type of game, or I think they're trying to encourage a certain type of thought, which is about sort of personal expression. But I think the drawback about that one is that it doesn't necessarily lend itself towards game ideas, at least for me. Now, I mean, it's worth keeping in mind, like, this is kind of one of the first times I've really sat down and tried to develop a game, so I might just be speaking more about my lack of strength in terms of idea generation. But I don't know, like, I sit down and think, if I was going to write a short story about what does home mean to me, there's a fairly straightforward, like, there's the old sayings, right? It's one of the most famous ideas that you can get out of these sorts of things, is that, you go off on a journey looking for home or a self, yourself, or some greater meaning, and by returning home you finally find it. And I mean, that's basically almost every single story. I mean, it's almost a hero's journey sort of a thing, right? So there's certainly no shortage of sort of storytelling opportunities for that. But the thing is that some games have really wonderful stories. Some game jam games have really wonderful stories, but it's less about a game at that point. It's more about the story that I want to tell, and how do I put this story in game form. Or at least that's the way that I think about a prompt like that. And that's fine too, because, like, if you think about something like Cultist Simulator, you can actually get something really interesting out of that. The confusion that you feel as the person playing the card game is the confusion that you, the player, are feeling trying to decipher what these cards mean. That can be very interesting. I'm going to read the research. Pockets of exotic gas are rare and often inaccessible by conventional means. Such deposits can only be reached by using special extractor technology, so we are in good shape for those. Star Fortress is always tempting. $33 months versus... Yeah, you know what? We're going to go for the crystal plating. pretty much close to the end of my time. But let's just set you up on an auto-explore now. I don't think I have anything special that I want this science ship to look at. Anyways, I'll finish the idea. So I did kick around some ideas for it. The alternative ideas are actually ones... Oh, this actually gives me a great decision. Okay. I'll finish the Global Game Jam thought. We'll make our tradition pick, and then we'll talk about what next week's stream is going to be about. So I'll tell you the alternative ideas that I had, but when I tried to pull a game idea out of these thoughts, I was thinking, like, so what does home mean to me? Because it's occurred to me that this would have had a different answer even like a year or two ago. I'm increasingly aware that really I feel a very strong connection to Vancouver, where I used to live. And I would probably argue the decisions that I made to go out here, knowing what I know now, I probably would have opted to stay in Vancouver. Which is not to say I don't like Ottawa, where I live right now, but I was, things changed, information, new information came to light that I might have acted on differently. So I can say my residence is in Ottawa, a specific building in this city, but in terms of sort of social connections and a place I feel a great attachment to, I definitely feel that in terms of Vancouver. So there's the idea of home as a residence, there's home as a concept, and then of course, most importantly, and this has definitely changed over the years as well, I've had an increasing sense of patriotism, especially interacting with people from other countries. I realize how fortunate I am to live in Canada, and it's easy for somebody to say that, but it's something I am acutely aware of living in the capital of my country and sort of reflecting on specific advantages that I have and things that I like about the country that I live in. And so I would be equally right in defining home as Canada, not necessarily a city or the room that I'm streaming in right now. And so, I did what a friend of mine kind of called the undergrad essay solution, which is to essentially make a game about my lack of definition over home. And so the idea that I'm working with right now is basically, it's a space game, so it's appropriate for Stellaris. And the idea is basically that you're in a ship, you're sort of lost in space. I think the original idea I had was you're actually trying to get home in time for a universal package service delivery, which demands that you be home between the hours of 0200 and 2300. And you don't want to miss the delivery, but for whatever reason you're lost in the galaxy. And the idea that I liked behind this would be that you need to basically get directions to home. But the problem that you run into is that you assume that running into sentient beings or running into other species, that they're going to be like you, that the conditions for home are going to be the same as what you need, like a nitrogen oxygen atmosphere or certain type of food or things along those lines. And by asking, maybe after a few planets you start giving up. It's like, well, can I just live here? And you'll get, well, I'm sorry, but it's a methane atmosphere. This would be toxic to you. And through encountering these other planets, these bad candidates for home, you learn how to properly define home, and that this will make the questions that you're asking more meaningful. It will help you narrow down the location of your home planet, and you'll be able to find home. So at the risk of sounding like a complete wanker, that is sort of how I transmitted my lack of a precise definition for home and my search for an answer to that particular theme into a series of game mechanics that I found kind of interesting. What I was able to do in the first 24 hours was basically randomly generate some galaxy. So I've got the maze down, and that is generated randomly. I was surprised at how straightforward it was, but it turns out that it's very difficult to work with Unity's UI system if you've never done that sort of thing before. I am assured that it's very powerful, that you can do a lot of things with it, but it is definitely not new user-friendly. And so, in addition, I also want to get some writing done to actually make the interactions with the planet mildly interesting. So we'll see if I can get that done. I think I need to give myself... I need to double-check the log that I wrote. I didn't sum everything up, but I think I have something like 11 hours, 12 hours or something like that, which I can spend making the game. And I think I have enough to get... Visually, it won't have anything going for it. But I feel like I have enough to... to get that idea across. But anyways, that was why I was so sleepy today. So after that filibuster, let's think a little bit about what our next move is going to be. So Dominion, this is a lot more about management and sort of clearing things. Diplomacy, so the trade value and the market feed is actually... Hang on, there's a limit that I need to be submitting to the... I need to double check the Federation mechanics. Market fee is definitely tempting. Supremacy, ship, power, fire rate, maybe, harmony... Lifespan, unemployment, governing ethics, amenities usage. Harmony might be the way to go. Yeah. I'm locking it in. Alright. I think that is it for tonight. So again, this is a little bit more of a building one. I know I got off topic when I talked about the game jam stuff, but apparently I was just dying to talk about it. We actually got a little bit more accomplished than I think is as obvious. So we've unlocked quite a few important resources. We made a little bit of progress towards adjusting our specializations within the capital. You too, Zalisur. It was a pleasure having you. It was a pleasure having you in the chat. I hope you have a wonderful evening yourself. I'll actually get this upgrade out of the way. So. In terms of infrastructure and that, we're well on our way to turning Rhizome Capital into sort of the headquarters planet, into a researching powerhouse. And the trade that we did, really, that was less about supporting the research initiatives, although I want to do that as well. It was really more about getting that infrastructure in place for me to be able to exploit the exotic gases. I can at least afford 2. And I'd like to see if there are some realistic opportunities for me taking advantage of more than one. For instance, if there's anything in the... Nah, just moats. So part of this is reorganizing my industrial areas to be a little more sensible. One of the other considerations for this has been the slow progress towards more pops working on given planets. And that's going to be translating into additional starbase capacity and eventually, hopefully, a fleet that can take on the Great Khan if they ever show up. Although apparently, let's reassign the leader. I don't get why this is red. I think it has something to do with like the default fleet settings. Drat. But yeah. I think probably for the next session, I'm not spoiling for a fight. The only thing I'd really want to do would be to take Tatanga. But if I'm going to take Tatanga, it would probably make sense for me to just carve out this little area here so I get a nice natural choke point. And I'm not particularly inclined to starting that fight. They do have an inferior fleet to me, but I'm not entirely sure, you know, like if we just kind of look at each of these, all that I'm really getting out of it are the moats. The rest is just kind of another liability. But we'll see. I mean, we don't quite know what'll happen. A lot of it's going to be more focused on building up the infrastructure, upgrading the buildings where we can, where we can't, trying to make sure that we're balancing out our consumer goods and our food. Food's in good shape now, consumer goods less so. But of course we've got 2 big new Gaia worlds, and then I also have a handful of some other planets which I can colonize if I want. In this case, Kesso and Zort. And then I'm also going to have some other alternative planets that I can colonize, like Yagrilla, and then some sort of... Basically, if I expand my borders a little bit, I can take some of the less desirable planets if I'm so inclined. But I'm really reluctant to push the Empire Sprawl any further than it is. I mean, we're kind of back to what we used to have. So we will decide all of that in future. Thank you everybody for hanging out. Omni-Eye, thank you for saying so. I'm sure you probably heard this a little bit earlier. Like, whenever there's not a lot that goes on, I do my best to try and do my best to how do I put it? I do my best to not get too in my own head about a quieter chat, but especially when there isn't as much happening in terms of the game, it's I sometimes wonder if I'm crashing and burning. Now, as it happens, guys, there is a friend of Johnny's, but also somebody who's a bit of a fan of this channel, who is streaming for the first time in a while. Oh, actually, it says testing, so I'm not going to drop that on here. That would be unkind. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to host Kilgore Trout, who is currently on the GOG.com channel. He's playing Betrayal at Krondor. Kilgore Trout's probably, I think a lot of you know him already. He's really well known for doing a lot of classic games, very friendly fellow Canadian. So I'd love it if you can give him a bit of support. And I'll maybe caution you guys, for those of you who enjoy the Elder Scrolls playthroughs, I might have to break my fairly regular series. And this is just because if I want to do another episode, I'd have to start recording it now. And even if I do a 3-hour one, that's going to bring me to 2 o'clock in the morning after doing a proper cast and feeling tired already. So I think, I mean, I'll try recording it. I just don't think it's going to be, or I'll try recording it tomorrow. I just don't think it's going to be ready for broadcast. So I might have to say no to that. But Cultist Simulator on Wednesday, probably back to Mass Effect on Friday. And I will do my best to try and make up for the missing Elder Scrolls. But anyways, thank you everybody for hanging out. As always, we'll see you over at the GOG channel. And thank you for your kind words. That really meant a lot. Have a lovely evening.